you take sugar and milk?
Good to see you.
Oh, that's fine. I did it. No.
It was a really good team back then.
We don't need it.
Thank you. No problem.
That's where I get my needle from. So I remember sitting there, giving us pressure.
Lovely to see smiles. I know the weather's not exactly great, but it's still good to see smiles on people's faces. So yeah, we're going to get started shortly. But for now, I just wanted to let everyone know the fire exit is actually that main exit we all came from. So just in case a fire alarm goes out, that's where we're going. Obviously in an ordinary fashion, don't all run out at once. We have teas and coffees and water and hot chocolate, so feel free to help yourself throughout the training. If you have any questions, need any support or anything like that, the people in the lanyards, the yellow lanyards, I'm wearing red because I'm special. Everyone in the yellow lanyards. Everyone in the yellow lanyards are my team, so just feel free to ask someone. Toilets are actually on your left here, so where Millicent is sat here, the lovely Millicent, just on your left. So feel free if you need anything. So other than that, without further ado, we're going to make a start. I know Bishop's just making his slides available and then we'll get started. So for those of you that don't know the Caribbean and African Health Network, we're actually based there in Manchester, a national health organisation, and we focus on health inequalities within the Caribbean and African community. We have different health services that we try to cater to that community, one of which is our counselling service. Again, within the pandemic, we noticed there was a need, different people having different mental health, anxiety, different issues as well, and people grieving within that time. So we set up a counselling service that's actually cultural and religiously appropriate for our patients. Throughout the week as well, we have, for example, a helpline that we also cater, and that is 24/7 as well. Again, for people that need support. We have some of our programs as well that we do a lot of community engagement, which is actually what we're doing here today, letting people know, showing people, raising awareness on different areas of health that is affecting our community. So today, this suicide awareness training, we actually have a campaign that we're running around on suicide awareness, just trying to let people know how to spot the signs and how to, when you see those signs, how to interact with someone that may be having suicidal thoughts. So today, this is why we're putting on this training, and it's so great that all of you could come today. Certificates will also be awarded for this training as well. So if you haven't already, when you registered before, please do let us have your contact details so that we can share that with you. Throughout today as well, we've also put on the table sticky notes, pens. If you need a pen, please again do let one of our members of staff know. And if you just need to take any notes, feel free. But without further ado, I think Bishop is still setting up slides. I think we can all go around. I think it would be nice for us all to introduce ourselves, which organisation we're coming from. I can see Keisha. Good to see you. So she's brought all her colleagues from DWP, so that's really great. But if you're not from there, it will still be good to hear where you're from. And let's just interact. Yeah. So there's only one mic. So I'm just thinking maybe shout out from where you are. But yeah. We have two. Oh yes, we're going to get another roving mic. I'll hand this one out, but just feel free to say your name, where you're from, and give me a little wave. Is that okay? So should I start? So I'm not on Zoom, because if we're Zoom, it will be the next face along the line. So I'm just going to pass.
I think I'll need the mic.
Oh.
Hiya. Hiya, I'm Jo and I work for the DWP and support Moses Street Job Centre as a Disability Employment Advisor.
Hi, I'm Sonia. I'm part of the program Mental Absence as a volunteer.
And I'm Patience from DWP as well. I'm representing UTP, my lovely colleague over here. And I'm at DEA as well, supporting customers welfare provision. As Dr. said, it's something we're on the front foot every day dealing with this waste of money. So thank you for having us.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Vida and I work at Woodstock Job Centre as a DEA Disability Employment Advisor. So our aim is to get as much information today as possible to support our customers. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Imran. I'm one of the disability employment advisors, covering 2 offices at the moment, Oaklandshire and Russian, with Riga. But it's just really great to be here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Phil. I work with Imran at Oaklandshire. I'm a youth employability coach. So I work with a lot of vulnerable 18 to 24s for DWP. So.
Hello, my name is Hafiza. I work at Cheetah Job Centre and I'm a service delivery work coach, so really just dealing with anything and everything that comes through the door.
Hiya, I'm Sarah. I work with people at CAHN Job Centre. I'm another disability employment advisor. I've got quite a mixed bag at CAHN, so I'm really looking forward to learning a bit more about how to manage some of our more complex kids.
I'm Julie from Newton Heath Job Centre, also Disability Employment Advisor, so all my colleagues are here and over here. I'm a support work coach at Newton Heath Job Centre when they come across anyone who might be expressing suicidal or thoughts of self-harm.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace. I also work at the Newton Heath Job Centre as a youth work coach. Nice to meet everyone.
Hi, I'm Angela. I work as a work coach for the Newton Job Centre as well.
Hi, my name is Janet. I do not work for the DWP. I work in a local church, but I'm here in a volunteer capacity because I work with children's ministry, and I have a large family that I would like to engage with.
I think mine is a bit related to that. I'm not from any organization, but I want to have experience. Yes.
Good morning, I'm Ashley. I'm a work coach at Russian Job Centre.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm working at Moses Street Job Centre as a work coach.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm also working at Moses Street as a work coach.
Hi, I'm Shantia and I work as a work coach at Newton Job Centre.
Hi everyone, I'm Naomi. I also work at Moses Street Job Centre as a work coach.
Say, I'm Lucy. I'm working at Moses Street Job Centre as well as a work coach.
Hi guys, I'm Molly. I work here at Russian as a work coach as well.
Hiya, I'm Bryony. I'm a student mental health nurse. I've been on placement with CAHN for the past 5 weeks, and today's the last day.
Hello, my name is Sylvia and I work for CAHN as one of the counsellors.
Hi, I'm Blessing. I work as a youth worker at Multi-Millennium Powerhouse.
Hello, I am Nelly. I'm a transformational life coach and I work with Hand in Hand Community CIC. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Yeah, but it's really good to hear, from those from DWP and then from those from local churches and for those that just want to hear and just gain that experience and just to know and how to spark the signs. And then Sylvia, that's one of our CAHN counselors. Just wave, Sylvia. So she's here, so if anyone needs support, if you're triggered in any way and just want someone to talk to, we do have some private rooms available on site, and Sylvia is here to support. And some of our other CAHN counsellors will be on site as well, so feel free. But it's really good to hear different names, different voices, and hearing where everyone's coming from. So thank you once again, and we're looking forward to interacting with you. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. No problem. All mingling and networking, that's great. We're going to get started now with the training. So I'm just going to introduce today's guest trainer. That's Bishop Herbert Mackenzie. I call him Herbie because we're friends. Herbert Mackenzie, and he is the senior pastor of New Testament Church of God, Dudley, and he is today's guest trainer. Again, throughout today, if you have any questions, we'll leave questions towards the end with the roaming mic to go round so that people can help themselves to ask. But remember, there's still pens, sticky notes on the table. Feel free to jot things down as we're learning. Again, if you need any support, look out for the people in the yellow and red lanyard, and we're here to support you throughout the day. Without further ado, we're going to hand over to Bishop Herbert Mackenzie. You can just give him a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Come back to me. We're really sorry, running slightly late. Trying to get everything sorted out and set up, but thank God we're here. So the wait is over. First question, has anyone ever done or attended a suicide awareness training before? One person, two, okay. So that's good. So we've got some experts here. You may be wondering why our church minister is doing suicide training. It's not always been a minister, or not always been kind of a full-time in church work. Part of my job has been working in mental health now for over 25 years, and for the past 10, 12 years working as a trainer in mental health and also in suicide awareness prevention. So really come with that kind of a background, and being a church minister is one of the most important things in terms of understanding the kind of emotional psychological needs that people go through, and how we can support them. And that's very important. And many of you who work in different organizations will come across people who are going through difficult times, and you probably have heard of people who have ended their life by suicide, and you're wondering how you might have helped them. If you knew that they were going through things, then you probably could be in a position to help them. And so that's good. And so we hope today we'll give you some ideas, we'll give you some skills, some understanding of how you might help someone going through a difficult situation, how you can spot those difficult moments that someone's going through, and how you can approach them and help them. And for those people who are going through, maybe have experienced it either directly or indirectly, the suicide, of course, today will be a very important day as well. Okay. I'll get our slide to work. Okay, so the elephant in the room. Suicide is not something that people want to talk about. Black mental health is a very difficult for many people, and particularly culturally, it can be very difficult when people have had loved ones who have ended their life by suicide, and they don't want to talk about it. Where people have experienced suicide themselves, whether they've had suicidal thoughts, or that can be quite difficult too for those
to those individuals. So like mental health, suicide, that's something that people often want to do, that is uncommon. You know, people have suicidal thoughts a lot of times. They may not act upon it, but they do have those thoughts. So it's important to recognize that there is this big thing that no one wants to talk about, but it's there, it exists, and there's stigma attaches to it. There's that discrimination as well as it does with mental health. But it's a quiz for you. It's a true or false, true or false. So in 2020, there were 5,224 suicide registered in England and Wales. Not counting Scotland or Ireland, it's England and Wales. True or false?
I think it's more.
It's a bit small. And I think it's true. Actually true. And that's the latest figures from the ONS, Office of National Statistics. And actually, why many of you thought it's false is because the numbers are usually much higher than that, over 6,000. And the reason why it's this, I think that this decrease is likely driven by two factors. Decrease in male suicide rates at the start of the pandemic, and because of death registration as well. So that's why the numbers are falling. More women than men end their lives by suicide. True or false? False. Everyone agree? It's false? Yeah. False. So around 3/4 of those figures in 2020 were men. So nearly 4,000, 25% were men in the 1990s. Next question. Is suicide the most common cause of death for men aged 45 to 64 years in England and Wales since 2010? True or false?
True. Younger age group.
False?
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Surprising, actually, because I think if you look at the wider span from, say, men aged 20, say, up to 45, 49, it's usually a much higher figure. But this is quite surprising, in fact, that older men, that age cohort, 45, 64, there's a very, very high incidence of suicide. 4, asking someone about suicide will make them start thinking about suicide. True or false? Okay. Yeah, false. Asking about suicide does not put ideas in someone's head. It is not already there. Okay. Another question. 60% of people who attempt or die by suicide have a mental health condition. True or false? True. False? False. 9%, but not all are diagnosed. And that's from the World Health Organization report there in 2016. 9%. Next question. Around 60% of people who complete suicide have been in contact with mental health services in the year before death. True or false? False. Only 10%. And that's from the local university report. They dated this report now, 2015, but it's still true. Yeah. Only 10%. What does that tell you? That people are not seeking help when they're in trouble. So what does it tell you about your role? How important your role is in spotting people, identifying people who are in trouble. Because they themselves will not come out and say to you, I'm in trouble, I need help. But you can spot it. You can identify those individuals who need help, who need support. So it does make your role a lot more important, isn't it? And that's why you're here on this training today. Yeah. Most people who are under the influence of sedative drugs such as alcohol or benzodiazepine, when they die by suicide. True or false? Most people. True. And that's research in 2013 by Horton and his colleagues. Finally, those who talk about suicide don't act on their words. Think it's false? That those who talk about it don't act on it? True or false? True. True. False?
I don't think you can ever take it for granted.
It's false. Anyone talking about suicide should be taken seriously. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many times someone come out and say, you know, I'm going to kill myself. Or thinking of killing myself. It's just not about crying wolf. It should always be taken seriously. As many times as possible, you deal with the person in a supportive way. Okay. So let's look at thoughts of suicide. Relatively common, much more common than suicide attempts. A lot of people have thoughts of suicide. They necessarily act on it, but they have thoughts of suicide. Among the general population, we're talking about 20% of people have had suicidal thoughts at some time, and about 6.7% have attempted suicide, or some percent have engaged in self-harm. And so we look at suicidal thoughts, how that increase with stressful life events, people going through a whole range of things in life. And I can't imagine how the past 2 years have been so terrible for people. And now people are thinking about cost of living and everything else and how they're going to make ends meet and so on and so forth. It piles up and up and up and up. It's a stressful situation, financial crisis, unemployment, problems with police, homelessness, all those kind of stuff that's listed there. At the end of the slide, I'm just going to show you a diagram, and I just want you to just keep these stressful events in mind when you look at that diagram. I'll show you at the end. So, substance misuse and suicide, alcohol and drugs, often used to relieve symptoms of mental distress. It can also worsen pre-existing mental health issues, strongly related also to suicide risk. Alcohol seen as a present increases in impulsivity. Something is often drunk by men before they attempt suicide. You ever watch one of those movies where the man who's probably middle class, upper class, something happened, the shame and scandal that's going to come out of that. Then got home, went into his study, closed the door, poured himself a glass of whiskey, then pull out his drawer, take out a gun. The next minute you hear is the sound of a gun going off. Yeah. So look at some risk factors. Person high risk, made previous attempts, his family history of suicide. And that's one of the reasons why we have the stigma as well, cultural issues here, where someone who have ended their life by suicide, and it brings a kind of a stigma and family as well. Have access to lethal means, people who work in certain kind of industry, like farmers, for example. Being diagnosed with mental health issues, social isolated, all these things. Being unemployed, homeless, terminal illness, and so on. A whole range of risk factors here. Someone suffering from bullying, abuse, or trauma, or neglect. These things are also risk factors. So, some warning signs: hopelessness, helplessness, shame, guilt, anger, rage. Someone feeling like there's no way out. A dramatic change in personality, appearance, or mood. Withdrawing from friends, family, society, someone someone you know who's all of a sudden not socializing, staying in, change eating or sleeping habits as well, all those kind of stuff. And those who work in organizations, individuals who suddenly there's a serious drop in their work performance. There's no reason for it, as you can see, but it's kind of worth checking out. I'm just flagging these up because when we go to the training proper, you'll begin to understand some of these things a lot more clearly. Someone who probably seems to have no reason for living, no sense of purpose in life, or talking or writing about death, dying, or suicide. Someone who's saying goodbye, putting their affairs in order. Someone who's giving away their precious things. And you're wondering why they're giving away that. Are they going somewhere? There's no reason for it that you can see. Or sudden unexplained recovery. They were unwell, but all of a sudden they pop into work and they're full of joy and spirit and you're wondering, the other day they were down in the dumps. All of a sudden they're just happy and you're just wondering how they recovered so quickly, so suddenly. Use of suicide chat rooms as well. So talking about suicide, those who talk about suicide don't act on suicide. That's a myth, as we discovered earlier. Someone appeared confident, can be really reassuring. So if you have a gut feeling about someone or something that you see, it is worth checking that out with a person. Just talk to them directly about it, ask them about any suicidal thoughts. And then during the next session, we will look and see how you can do that more effectively and in a proper manner in which the person doesn't feel frightened about it, or you don't feel frightened about asking somebody about suicide. So if someone that reveals thoughts of suicide, that they're thinking about ending their life by suicide, is just ask some further question and open question really in order to support them further. We're going to show you how to do that later on. So attitudes towards suicide. If a person wants to suicide, they have the right to suicide. I mean, some people do believe that. I don't know, some of you in here might feel that way. That's what someone thinking of ending their life by suicide. Oh, by the way, one phrase that we do not use when we talk about suicide is to say someone has committed suicide. We use the phrase someone has ended their life by suicide. Committed suicide, it's almost sound like it's a crime. They commit a crime. And once upon a time, suicide was a crime. They ended their life by suicide. It was a criminal offense. We didn't do that. It's no longer is. And that's part of the idea of trying to destigmatize the whole issue around suicide and mental health. So you never say someone has committed suicide. That's someone that's ended their life by suicide. Yeah. I know the media continues to say, to say someone, people have committed suicide and so on. We see this in the TV programs and so on, but it's wrong. So one attitude towards suicide is that if a person wants to suicide, or end their life by suicide, then that is their privilege, that is their prerogative. They have the right to do that. So one else might say, well, no one has a right to suicide, no one has a right to take their own life. From a religious perspective, most faith, I know, do believe that one's life belongs to God, so you have a right to take your own life, or the God should take your life. Yeah. So that's another view. Another person might think that a suicidal person is mentally disturbed. Another one might say contemplating suicide is a rational process. So there's various attitudes toward suicide, and we have them. Some people don't want to talk about it at all. Some people are quite open to talk about suicide with somebody who's having thoughts of suicide. And that can be very reassuring for that person to know that you're on the same page with them, that you're willing to listen to them. You're open about suicide. So if they think you have a hang-up about suicide, that they're very unlikely to want to talk to you about it. Because if I'm coming to you and say, hi, I'm not feeling well, I feel like I want to end my life by suicide, and I know your reaction, you're going to say, oh no, you can't do that, that's wrong, I might not want to tell you what I'm thinking. Yeah. But if I know that you might want to talk to me about it and be open to listen to me, I might feel more comfortable. So it's important, really, in your workplace, it's if you're talking to someone, if you have some negative views about suicide, keep them down. Keep them out of the way, because you want to engage with the person. You want them to talk to you, and you want to help them. You don't want your attitude, whether it's a negative one about suicide, to actually be a barrier, to be an hindrance. So just keep it down. Okay. So how do you support someone with thoughts of suicide? Yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at in the next session. So I should tell you, one of my I'm a mental health first aid trainer. So I've been doing that for about 12 years. But also I'm a suicide assist trainer and self-talk trainer from Living Works. So in suicide prevention, there are two trainings that I do. There's a 2-day assist workshop, which gives you more in-depth skill and understanding about suicide. That's a very difficult training for most people, because it really goes into nitty-gritty about suicide. And some people probably leave after the first session because it's too difficult. But that's a 2-day course. And this diagram is taken from that 2-day course. It's called the River of Suicide. And up here You see those things that we're talking about, those kind of risk factors about homelessness, about financial problems, and all those things, they're called tributaries, force of suicide. So imagine, we might be losing this microphone soon. Just imagine then that someone going through, you know, like this morning, for example, it's on the news that 90,000 civil service jobs are going to be lost. Just imagine that someone one of those jobs, and they're already going through financial difficulties, and then get notice that they're going to lose their job. You know, just bought a house with a new baby, you know, and everything. And just imagine all of that. And they're already, you know, concerned about a whole lot of stuff. Imagine those little tributaries piling up towards a person. This barrier here, that's what's called the dam. Yeah? And so all those things, yeah, you can imagine a river, it has to start from somewhere. And you have to start with different tributaries, you know, all coming together, joining. So all these things come to the dam, they start piling up, and you think, you know what, I just can't see any way out of this. You know, this is too much for me. You know? The dam is rising. Sooner or later, it's going to start going over. And once it starts going over in that blue area, that's the river of suicide. You start having thoughts of suicide, because the only way you might see yourself getting out of it is by ending your life. It's not being here. Yeah. And that river, as you know, river runs, and it gets wider and faster, and this is the waterfall here. And so once you're in that river of suicide, start having thoughts of suicide, you know, the person having difficulties, that's where you can actually spot people up here in the tributaries before they get into the river of suicide. But you can actually help them before they go over the waterfall. Because going over the waterfall is when they've actually acted upon their thoughts. And two things might happen then. They either die or hurt themselves badly. Okay? So it's really to avoid them going over the waterfall, because we don't know what might happen then once they've gone over the waterfall. Okay? So, any questions so far? Have you learned anything?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry, I've got a question. On one of the slides, on the warning signs, it said sudden unexplained recovery is one of the warning signs. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, I want to say to someone who's been unwell, you know, and then suddenly they seem to have recovered.
Why would that be a warning sign?
Yeah, because if someone being unwell, so you know, someone being unwell, they're going through, you know, sort of health problems, and suddenly they recovered, they seem to be okay. Say maybe at work, you know, someone was unwell, or they came into work and they seem to be quite fully recovered and so on. It might be something.
They don't want you to know that something's wrong.
Yeah.
So it could be in the plan.
Yeah.
They've already planned it.
Yeah.
Because that has been okay, because they don't want you to be, they don't want to trigger
Yeah,
anyone,
yeah.
because they've already got the line.
Are you talking about mentally unwell, not physically?
Both. Because yeah, they might have made up their mind about suicide, and now they're happy, they're settled in their mind, that's what they want to do. So they're, you know, they're okay. I thought you were well. No, I'm fine. Oh, life is so wonderful. Oh, come on, something. You don't just recover like that. You know, unless, of course, a miracle.
So if for any reason, like physically or mentally, for example, I'm going through such an ordeal, and then it's so hard for me to cope, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to end my life, and it's really like I've defined that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's going to make me like relieved and happy.
Yeah.
So I might go back to work or to my other day-to-day life. So because now I'm content that I'm getting rid of all that problems, you know, probably.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's exactly that, to be honest.
Thank you for explaining.
Yeah. And that's what can seem so shocking if you're not aware of that to people, you know, when it happens.
Now, this is not an official Safe Talk training, otherwise I would have given you some books and some other stuff. So I'm not going to send any reports after them about you as training and how to prepare. But I'm using it because I think it's very important to actually do this training and raise further awareness and support. I think I'm going to be okay. I don't know what's wrong with it. Okay. So Safe Talk is and assist as well. It's usually one has to be trained to actually deliver those programs. Yes, this workshop is 2 days, and to become a trainer, it's about a week you have to spend training. For the Safe Talk, this one I'm delivering, it's only about 3 days training to deliver this. But it's usually within the content is about 2.5 hours. So I'm going to try and condense it best I can. Okay. So what this next session will do is just to help you identify persons with thoughts of suicide, and really enable you to connect with persons with thoughts of suicide to what we call suicide first aid resources. There are out there in the community. For example, if you're working with somebody and they're having thoughts of suicide, you can help them to a certain point, but you might need to just hand them over to somebody else who will take them further. And so it's important to really, this is kind of being alert to those individuals and being in the position to pass them on to somebody else who can give them the support that they need. So it's important really, as we said, that we're concerned about the safety of our friends and family, want to do more to alert to the risk of suicide, and of course want to respond very quickly to when someone might be at risk of suicide. And so it's important that you can use the steps in this next session, which may help you to save life. As I said, it's a tough subject, and when we talk about suicide, if you have had experience of it, either directly or indirectly, I think I understand there are counselors here, there are people here you can talk to, or you can talk to me during the break. So it's don't leave yourself vulnerable. Just talk to someone if you need to. So, in the training, you're going to be learning about how to become suicide alert, to identify people who might be having thoughts of suicide, and to connect them to persons trained in suicide intervention. As I said, there are people in the community. It depends on where you work. it would be good to actually know organizations or individuals in their community who is in a position to help people with thought of suicide. So as a suicide alert helper, you will connect persons with thought of suicide to others. And they will provide the equivalent of emergency or physical first aid or first aid for persons whose life is threatened. And so your role is to be aware of suicide threats to life, thoughts of suicide, and then to connect the person to those resources out there in the community. Okay. If you have any questions during the presentation, I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, just okay, so if you do have any questions during the presentation, just ask. Okay, so one of the resources that we're going to be having during the session is a kind of a tape resource. Who I'm going to call my co-trainer. His name is Kari, and he's going to present a lot of the very basic message about safe talk. Leaving me free to help make sure that you understand and are comfortable with these messages. Suicide. He lost someone important to him to suicide. This was, and it will also bring a first-hand experience to this message around the basic message around safe talk, but in a safe way. So,
hello,
Mr. Kari.
I hope you will invite me into your Safe Talk training. I hope to be able to work with your on-site trainer in a way that allows him or her to focus on you and your learning. I will present some parts of this training, and my co-trainer will present others, particularly the interactive parts. Several times I will tell you about some personal experiences with suicide. These experiences are real, but they are not mine. They belong to one of the developers of this program. He wants me to make them as real. Hello. I hope you will invite me into your Safe Talk training. I hope to be able to work with your on-site trainer in a way that allows him or her to focus on you and your learning. I will present some parts of this training, and my co-trainer will present others, particularly the interactive parts. Several times I will tell you about some personal experiences with suicide. These experiences are, but they are not mine. They belong to one of the developers of this program. He wants me to make them as real as possible by treating them as if they were mine. Please allow us the artistic license to help make suicide as real as it is. And now I begin. If you are like me, you know about the costs of suicide all too well. Maybe you experienced a suicide at work, or at school, or even of a media personality who was important to you. Maybe you experienced the loss of someone close to you, as I did, with the death of my father by suicide. You may still be questioning whether you or anyone else could have done anything different. Unfortunately, it is the nature of suicide that some of those questions may always remain unanswered. Safe Talk assumes that all of us here today either have hope or want to have hope that something can be done for persons with thoughts of suicide who are alive now. I invite all of you to join the two of us in looking at ways to be helpful for those who can still be helped. If you find that you can't think about hope or helping others at the moment because you can only think about the person you lost to suicide, please let my co-trainer know.
Okay. Safe Talk, like I said, is was developed in North America and Canada. So, but it's been very widely used, delivered across the world, particularly in Australia, America, in this country as well. As I said, for the past 10, 12 years, I've been training in suicide prevention, and from 2016 in this particular training session, Safe Talk, when I was working for a mental health charity in Rochdale, probably delivered well over 25 training sessions, and so far trained hundreds of people in Safe Talk. So that's how important it is that people always want to know about how suicide, about how to help people who are having suicidal thoughts. One thing to just say, if during the session, if we have what we call, when we're doing thorough like mental health or suicide, there's something like a thumb rule, that if we are presenting, and because we understand how difficult the subject is, and some people might find it very stressful, if you're leaving, and so for example, if you're going to the toilet or so, or just want to go out for the first minute, you're okay, just go thumb up, okay? And so I know that you're not leaving because you need help. If you do need help, if you find anything stressful and you're leaving because of that, do a thumb down, and then somebody will follow you and to make sure that you're okay. Is that all right? Now, thumb up if you're okay, thumb down if you're not, okay? Because we know how difficult and stressful this session is, all right? Okay, so if you're all ready, we can begin. So I'm going to ask Cara to show us why learning how to be suicide alert is important.
Let me show you, in a different way, why you might want to become or learn more about being a suicide alert helper. Someone who can connect a person with thoughts of suicide to a suicide intervention caregiver. We are going to show you 3 different and quite short scenes in which something very important doesn't happen. Watch carefully.
There we are. Wonder what was going on when you didn't have anything to say in class. You wanna go somewhere and talk?
I have this. Sorry, I need to get going. I gotta get home before anyone else does.
Well, I'm heading home too. I can walk with you part of the way.
Thanks, but I gotta go to the store first. It'll be fine.
Says her prescription isn't working, can't seem to shake her depression, and, how did she put it, other things.
Anything else?
No, not really.
Okay, well, show her in, please.
Okay.
So Helen and I are splitting up. No, you're kidding. Are you gonna be okay? No. And yes. Well, so you're moving out. Do you want to borrow my truck? No. Well, anything I can do to help, just let me know. I've got it figured. I have a way out of this mess. Figured so.
Okay. Okay. So before I move on, there's a car MA04BWP.
That's mine.
Okay.
The guy told me to pull that.
No one said to move it.
He did tell me to pull that.
I guess it was. All right. Okay. So we're gonna revisit those three clips because what I meant to show is three situations in which something should have happened but didn't. Okay. So we're gonna revisit those later on as well. Yes, Howard.
Are you alert to the possibility that something else might have been done in each of these situations? You may have sensed the possibility that one person in each of these scenes might be thinking about suicide, and that the other person did not appear to recognize that possibility. You may also recognize yourself as being either or both of these people in the past. Your suspicion about something being missed doesn't need to be certain knowledge at all. Just a hunch, even a funny feeling, that the possibility of suicide is not being recognized. If you are aware of that possibility at any level, you have the ability to become suicide alert. In attending this training, you are indicating that you want to be the kind of person who wants to become suicide alert. After all, it can be unpleasant to be aware of the possibility of suicide and not know what to do about it. Safe Talk invites you to notice when suicide may be present, accept that any possibility of suicide is serious, and learn how to connect a person with thoughts of suicide to other help.
Any questions, comments about that?
My only comment is, thank you. My only comment is, I was just thinking that, how do we put it now? I was thinking of, you know, the direct line insurance when the Busby car comes in and it's already been sorted or something like that. In the sense that you may think, you may be overthinking a situation. You know, so you've gone in thinking, oh yes, I'm a suicidal bastard. Yes, you must be thinking of suicide. So I've gone in there and overthought it, overcomplicated it, and probably embarrassed the situation or taken it very far.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, that comes up quite often. We'll never do it now. We can get some again later on, but I think it will come up later on too. Yeah. There is that feeling that you don't want to embarrass yourself. You don't want to actually ask somebody a question about suicide in case, say for example, if you ask them, are they thinking of suicide? And somebody doesn't want to ask that question either. But if you did ask the question and someone said, no, I'm not, then you might feel a bit embarrassed and so I've just made a fool of myself. You shouldn't feel that way because your position is about trying to help somebody. And if you have any uneasy and comfortable feeling about something that you may have seen or heard, you know, or just had this feeling about, it's worth checking out. Because the last thing you want is to be saying, I wish I had. Yeah. It's better to make a fool of yourself than not done anything and then regret it for life. Yeah. So it's important, and that's how I can say. Because oftentimes we've seen situations and we hadn't acted upon it. You have a feeling about something and you hadn't acted upon it, and then you regret it later on when you realize that actually if you could have done something to have prevented something from happening. Yeah. So it's not a matter of overthinking or kind of rushing in trying to solve a situation that probably doesn't exist. It's about just checking something out first. Okay. But that will come up again later on. Here's Harry again.
Let us look at it another way. Studies tell us that in any given 2-week period, 1 in 20 people, or 5% of the community, are thinking about suicide. Thus, at least one of these people, and it could be any of them at any given moment, is very likely to be thinking about suicide right now. The potential for thoughts of suicide is part of being human. While people with life skills and personal connections might be less likely to have thoughts of suicide, no one is perfectly safe from them. Almost anyone can have thoughts of suicide. But while the potential for thoughts of suicide cannot be prevented, suicidal acts, doing something that may result in injury and death, can be. The people who are thinking about suicide in this picture are still thinking about suicide, not yet acting upon those thoughts. There is good reason to assume that they are still in this picture. Most people thinking about suicide are not sure that they want to injure themselves, and indeed, the vast majority never do. Most want help in staying alive. Because they want this help, almost all people thinking about suicide, either willingly or unconsciously, invite others to recognize that they are thinking about suicide.
Okay, so you might be wondering, why would they want to do that? I mean, if they want to die, why would they want to let anyone know about it?
Probably seeking help.
Good answer. Yeah. They're trying to let someone know what they're thinking about, hoping that someone might intervene. Because having thought of suicide doesn't mean that the person really wants to die. That's important, really. That's why, back to your question, is to intervene, is to ask. Because someone might not even verbalize what they're about to do. By their very action, their appearance and countenance, you can read those signs and see that something is not quite right. And that might be their way of telling you that things are not quite right with me and I need help. But don't necessarily have to come from and say, this is what I'm about to do.
Sometimes it's quite difficult to come up with that, to open up to others to say that I need help, because I'm talking from my own experience. It's really difficult issue to come out, but as an advocate, as a work coach, DEA, we should be alert to see, ask more questions to find out, as you said earlier on, to establish what that person is thinking. So it is really difficult to come across and express yourself that I am thinking, because I was thinking a couple of times before when I was going through my own treatment, but I've not disclosed that information to anybody else because I didn't know where to go, who to access, and where can I get the help from. It's really difficult to open up, and we should open our eyes more wisely to understand the situations, because it's not easy subject, and it's not something that you would understand or you would realize. Just asking more questions would help, because when I was going through the process, nobody even came to me or said to me, are you thinking, or what's happening? Because I was lost in the forest, basically. I didn't know what to do with myself. And it's really hard. And it's not just one occasion I was thinking about, it was a couple of occasions. I even stood up to open the front door to get out of the house while everybody is fast asleep, so that nobody would know what I've gone through, what I've done with myself, because I couldn't cope with the situation and with the pain. So going through the videos and everything, memory came back, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I've been through this. I can feel the pain that people are going through, and I was just thinking about, I hope my eyelids. So it's hard. It's hard to go through things like that. And I thought I was a very strong person to come, to get over, because to having news and going through the same, it just moves you to another level. You don't think about anything else. You don't think about anybody. You just think, how do I get out of this problem? And the only way you can get out is that. I can't even repeat that word, because, as you said, in villages, giving up yourself is like a crime. It should be God who's taking your life. So if I didn't have enough faith in God, I'd probably have already done that at the time. So, thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
It's very hard process to go through, and it's very emotional. And if you don't have self-control or faith, then you could go through the wrong direction, honestly. So it is hard. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing. And can I just say to everybody, please respect other people's stories that they share, and their confidentiality as well. Because we want to make this a safe place for people to share. Suicide is not something that we want to mess around with or to broadcast.
I'm open book, so if you want more information,
I know.
if you want to know more about, I don't mind sharing the experience, because I think people should understand and people should realize what the other people are going through. Because in my family, I was the first one to go through something like that. So nobody, sorry, I'm sure I'm laughing. So I don't think, I don't have a problem to share with anybody or anyone, because I think if we don't share something like that, you don't get to know what's the issues behind the scenes. So I think, confidentiality, yes, I agree with that, but if anybody wants any information or anything, I'm open. So I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
I would follow on the same thing, because I went through the same thing myself. But the only thing that prevented me was the faith. That's the only thing that stopped me. It felt as if it thought to stop. First thing, it stopped. But there has been quite a few occasions where I thought, there's no point in living anymore. What's the point? But then I pushed myself and I said, no, I have to live. There are people relying on me. My family relies on me. I have friends. My mom will think. And it's not good for everyone. But what I would like to say in my role as a work coach, I do try to talk to people when I feel that they are in very difficult situations. They don't know where to go. I try to find help in my husband as much as I can. That's all we do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Our experience is a powerful tool in terms of supporting people with forms of suicide. I've actually been through that too, and I've come out of it, but I can be there for you too. So there, just want to move on.
It just shows how important sessions like it just shows how important sessions like these are in being able to recognise those who may be even having thoughts of suicide, because I know even working culturally in a lot of cultures, because it doesn't just start there, like depression and things like that, it's not really recognised. So it's very difficult then to actually go and approach anybody when it's looked at as maybe witchcraft, or you're looking at less than what you are. So for others to be able to recognise that and allowing people to have a safe space to talk without being judged is the beginning of talking about it. And that's why we have the talking therapy as one of those places where people can actually come and feel safe without being judged. So that's what I think. It's great that everybody is here so that we're learning new skills as well in how to recognise it amongst friends, family, and workmates and others.
Okay, thank you for that. So, it's at some part, you can understand that some part of that person doesn't want to die. One part of them, that's it, they're crying out, they're in a hopeless situation, they probably see no way out, but another part of them doesn't want to die and seeking help. And this is always the case, right up to and including the time of dying. Some doubts remain, and most of the time, doubt is stronger. Or just put it another way, life is strong. The part that wants to live works hard to find a way to let others know that there is threat to life. And so that's why it's important really that we kind of listen. I know there are suicides that seem to happen very quickly, and this is where there seems to be very little time between the thoughts of suicide and the act of suicide. There are times when someone just spurs a moment. It's decide to do it. The other thing I want to say is that doesn't matter how well you know somebody, you might not detect or know what that person is thinking, and so it can be difficult if you then find yourself in a position where someone close to you has taken their life or ended their life by suicide, and you feel like you want to beat yourself up because you didn't know, and you're thinking, well, why didn't I know? No, someone can conceal that so well that you will not know. I hope today the skills you will learn will help you to be more alert, to be more aware of what someone might be going through, and that if you have any doubts, I keep saying this because it's so important, if you have any doubts at all, is just check them out and find some way of asking open-ended questions. It's like I don't know the training that I do a demonstration about asking people questions, and like this is someone phoned in and you see Janet and said, "Janet, are you all right?" And I'm waiting. I'm telling you the answer because I'm not going to know. You say, "Yeah, you're right. You're right." And I'm not. Rather than say, "How are you?" And it's much more important to actually ask that question in that way, so you have to tell me how you are, because if you then responded, "Oh, things could be a lot better," I would pick up on that and say, well, not everything is good. So what part is good and what part is not good? So I might follow through with another question. Ronan said, oh, you're right. And most people would say, oh yeah, everything is fine. You know, because it's easier. Ronan said, no, it's because I don't, you want to unload another person. So it's important about asking questions, and you ask questions to people. Yeah? Yeah, cool.
Question. In our job, we deal with quite a lot of people who are very, very vulnerable. And I must admit, sometimes I feel like I'm burning out. It's almost like compassion fatigue. I'm talking, oh, thank you, to that many people with really serious mental health. I'm almost becoming desensitized to it. Does anyone else get that? And I don't know how to deal with that because I don't want to lose my compassion, but I see it so often that sometimes I feel like it takes a lot more to shock me than it used to.
Yeah. You can feel that kind of way as well. And for me, I think those of us kind of work in those situations, and I kind of put myself in that position as a pastor, where you're hearing a lot from people all the time. That's how you kind of separate yourself from it as well. It's like, you know, as a minister, the church pastor, one of the things I see and do a lot is funerals. And I just had one this week, there's one next Wednesday, and another one following Wednesday. You know, and how you separate yourself from death, from seeing so many death, you know, and supporting those individuals. And it's about, it's not really, it's kind of take yourself and go off on another planet and say, okay, they're all right, and I'm here. But it's always having that detachment as well, not really carrying that with you, and finding somebody to talk to as well. Yeah, that's very important, because it's easy to take that kind of stuff home and sleep with it and then go back to work with it the next day. But it's good to just find someone to talk to, or find something that can actually detach yourself from it. It's not about not caring or not being in the moment with the person, but it's about looking after yourself and making sure that you're healthy mentally, physically as well. Otherwise, you're not going to be the person that you want to help. Yeah.
I think this has got even more difficult from our point of view, because now we take our laptops home. Yeah, well, we're working from home, so the day didn't finish at 5, the day can carry on, and your laptop's at home, you're thinking, okay, just do a little bit now, 8 o'clock at night, so you're ready to start again afresh in the morning, but actually your day is now 4 hours longer, isn't it, than any other, so that's difficult for us.
Yeah.
Just got a question. Obviously, these two men saying they raise these concerns. So, what can we do for ourselves, especially when we deal with mental health people? Honestly, with our job, we do deal with people who suffer from anxiety, depression, mental health, you name it, suicide thoughts, everything. So, what can we do, because it does get a lot when we deal with them every day, and probably 6, 7, 8 times a day. What can we do for ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's about determining about what you can do, how far you can go, and what you need to pass on to somebody else. But it's about also making sure that you're okay. I talk about having somebody who I can talk to. Thank goodness I have my other wife. I can, she's a mental health professional as well, so we can talk, about that, and that's great. But having somebody outside of maybe of your work that you can talk to about those things. I know in some workplaces, I know where I work, when I was working. We had people we could talk to within the organization as well, so that's very important. About stressful moment because working in a mental health organization and dealing with issues every day and cases and so on, it can really make life very stressful. You really do need to go and talk to somebody about it, someone who's able to listen and give you good pointers, advice.
So I think you have to be disciplined as well. So I was just going to carry on from that now, from working. I don't do it now.
I mean, I can switch off. I can switch off after a certain time. I know I don't take things home because I know how to switch off. I've taught myself by, well, but sometimes you do that. Means some of the things you can't go home and talk to Mrs. or anybody else because you think, you know what, if I tell her, she'll probably start thinking and it's too much. And sometimes it's just what I was, in a way, thinking, what other activities we can do, even though I do know, like for I'm trying to switch it off and I know where to signpost and what's my limit and everything now, but sometimes I think something needs, I need something so I can relax myself. I don't know if I don't explain it properly.
If it's bouncing around your head and it's never going anywhere. So I often kind of write it down and then it's there and then I can leave it and shut up. Because I'm not good at switching off as you. I mean, I was in a pool on the floor yesterday, wasn't it? Because of one of our claimants who is suicidal. And, sometimes it's a trigger. And I think that's the other thing, it's about knowing your triggers. I'm so claimant and I'll say something and it triggers something in you because it resonates with you. So with this particular claimant, because they have a child the same age as me, and it just, and I almost think that's powerful. If you know what your triggers are, then you know that you're going to react in a certain way, and you can rationalise it almost and then write it down when you get that. So that's what I try and do.
Can we do any activities like self-help stuff, leisure, reading, any stuff that would, I remember as a student, one of the things I used to do, I listen to the library, I know my limit. And I used to take time out from studying, go and watch a movie, or just go and do something where my mind is not focusing on something. I'm a avid TV watcher, I like watching my Marvels and my DCs and something like that. And it takes me, when I'm in that moment, I'm sitting on TV, you're not sitting there watching the TV. I am watching the TV, but my mind is off church stuff. All those funerals, all those people that are coming to me for advice and support. I'm not in that environment right now. I'm just somewhere else. I'm on a different environment. Tomorrow, I'll deal with it. But I think you just need that as well. You need to do something. Go for a walk. After music. Get the microphone, your headphones in the ears and go for a walk. And you just listen to the music and you're relaxing. But I think it's important for people who work in situations like that. I do understand exactly what you're saying, but it's important to look after yourself. Find ways in which you can detach yourself from it. And whether it's leisure, or some other activity, that's going to be important for you.
Sorry, can I just add to your answer there? With people who are dealing with suicidal thoughts, there's a lot for them to deal with, and that's why we also signpost them. But I think it's really important to know that there are places that we can signpost ourselves. There are a lot of charities and different organisations that can support you in supporting somebody else. So I've recently gone through where one of my family members and one of my friends were having suicidal thoughts, both in two different ends of, I don't know how to explain it, just two different versions of what they were going through. And I sought out to one of my friends who provided some support, but at one point it was a lot and it was kind of burning me out as well, because I was going through my own mental health situations as well. So there are charities out there and there are organisations out there that can support you as well, because sometimes going to a family member or a friend, they might not understand, they might not have the training, and it can be a lot for them as well. And if you're taking it home with you, you're speaking to your wife, your sister, whoever it is, it's technically still in the home, so it's still on your mind. So definitely reach out to the professionals that can also help you as well.
No, I mean, we do have great organizations within civil service, as we know. It's just like I said, I've taught myself, I'm quite good at switching off accidentally, but only sometimes. Because those times are only split seconds, or probably just a minute or two, but then that minute or two is so heavy on your skull.
It's the recovery from fight or flight, isn't it? Because we go automatically.
And at that time you don't
fight
talk to those organizations because you think, yeah, I know what to do. You know exactly the picture, you know exactly what you're going to report. That split second. So this is why I was asking, what activity can we do to engage yourself to, I mean, the organizations are absolutely great. I know they are there, even in the civil services. But it is just that I'm one of, I don't know, I would say I'm one of the lucky ones who can switch off. And I know my limits, I know where to find sports, I know everything else, but it's just sometimes, it was just that pressure. But thank you so much. It's great.
Okay, I'm going to stop right here 5 minutes, and do a 5 minutes break, and then we'll come back. Okay. All your question.
Sorry, we took your time.
All your question. No, because it's really interesting, and it's just in 5 minutes break.
The pens on the table and write those down, and then we will come back to them, because I want everyone to feel free to ask those, so please do write them down.
I am Nelly Kwasungmi, and I'm representing Hand in Hand Community CIC based in Greater Manchester. So this workshop today on suicide is really, really important. I've been in the mental health sector for a long time, and mental health is something that I'm really passionate about, and knowing about this suicide alertness training has been really good. It's like a refresher for me, because people are suicidal and they think about it in secret, so it's something that is done in secret. Raising this awareness is fabulous, and it just coincides with what I am doing in the month of May, which is raising awareness on mental health. I am doing this challenge in the month of May, and it's just so nice to be here and hearing other people's experiences. It's really, really good. And I'll take this back to my organization and the people I work with, so we can continue talking about mental health in all aspects.
I'm Angie. I'm from the DWP. I'm a work coach. I'm finding this event really useful. We've just done the first half where we've been introduced to the possible signs of suicide, and hopefully in the second half Herb will teach us how to approach these individuals and how we can help them, and also signpost them to other resources.
Both work at Cheetham Hill Job Centre. I'm a disability employment advisor, and Hafiza is
Service delivery work coach.
So we both work with a variety of vulnerable people, don't we? Cheetham Hill has quite a unique set of communities. Traditionally it has a lot of refugees, and refugees come with a lot of vulnerabilities, and often we're the first people they meet when they get to this country. So we have to be very much aware of the impact of what they've been through. We're getting people who are coming from war-torn places, people who have left their families behind, and so we are very much aware of the trauma that they've been through, and sometimes that does translate into them being very, very low, having really, really low mental health. So I think it was important for both of us to come to this training to understand when we can spot the signs, when it's got to a point where they can't cope anymore. And sadly that is happening quite a lot, so that's why we wanted to be here.
Yeah, and so far the training session is going really, really well. There's a lot of different signs and different support that is made aware to us, as well as supporting ourselves. So it's going really well, and we're looking forward to just learning a lot more in the second part of this.
People talking about suicide because part of them wants to live. There's a side of them that wants to live. So those people with thought of suicide want help to live. Okay, let's listen to Karen.
So here is this person, uncertain about suicide, who is either actively telling others that they need help, or at least is unwilling or unable to hide that they are troubled about something. One might assume then that somebody else in this picture would help. After all, they are likely helpful and caring people. But unfortunately, without the kind of things you will learn in this program, their and your chance to help prevent suicide might be missed, dismissed, or avoided. Let's say that many of the 19 did not recognize that there was one or maybe more than one person among them who was thinking about suicide, only discovering that they had a chance to help when it was too late. In other words, many missed the sometimes subtle, but more often obvious hints that a person is thinking about suicide. Among those who recognized that thoughts of suicide were involved, most of this group did not take the thoughts seriously. In other words, they dismissed thoughts of suicide as not really being serious. Of those who took the thought seriously, many in this group avoided getting involved because they felt unprepared to help. Safe Talk provides you with alternatives to missing, dismissing, or avoiding suicide. The training will help you get rid of some of the misleading notions that provide reasons to miss, dismiss, and avoid suicide. Instead, it will encourage and support reasons to reach out and help. What an alert helper learns, what you will learn, is how to recognize things that might be connected with suicide and how to ask about thoughts of suicide in a direct and open way. You will also learn some basic things you can do once you know that thoughts of suicide are present. We will talk about what you can do to play a part in keeping thoughts of suicide from becoming injuries and deaths. You will only need to help once to feel that your time here was well spent. You will very likely have a chance to help and to feel good about helping many more times than that. There was a time in my life when having more suicide alert helpers might have made a big difference to me. They, you, could have gotten me to help sooner and ease the pain of struggling with suicide alone. Obviously, I won that struggle, but I would have been very grateful to anyone alert to my need for help sooner than I got.
Okay. So, we're just moving on to the Safe Talk side. Talk and Safe Talk has two meanings. And talk stands for the idea that direct and open talk about suicide is the key to preventing suicide. In another, a more specific way, talk, facilitate, tell, ask, listen, and keep safe. These are the steps that a suicide alert helper, and that's what you will be, being alert to suicide and being in a position to help. So these are the steps that you will need or learn about to help someone with thoughts of suicide. So let's start doing some safe talking about suicide.
The T stands for TED, and in part refers to what a person with thoughts does. If a person tells us about their thoughts of suicide in the clearest way possible, it will be very hard to miss suicide. Something like, I'm thinking about suicide, about killing myself. I would like you to help me not to do that. That message is pretty obvious. You might dismiss it or avoid it, but you are not likely to miss it. It would be great if all persons with thoughts of suicide would tell someone in the clearest way possible. Indeed, some do, but most don't.
any ideas why a person with thoughts of suicide might be careful about who they tell about and how direct they are willing to be in their telling about suicide? Any ideas why someone might be unwilling?
I think they may choose somebody that will actually help. So,
Choose someone.
It will be, yeah. Choose somebody that they might think will help their situation as opposed to just sympathise and do nothing and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think it's also they might tell somebody who they feel safe with, they feel like they're not going to be judged as well.
Yeah.
This big message within suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might think that they're not going to understand me.
Okay.
Okay. So I think it's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
Be judged.
Very important. Be judged. Weakness.
You're out to tell someone that you don't actually know.
Yeah.
Because you don't want people around that know you well to know what's outside.
Yeah,
Do they feel guilt though about putting it onto somebody else as well?
I felt some strange and
Or they don't want to be stopped, that's the other thing.
Yeah, the guilt runs, not just with strangers, but also with people in the family. A number of years ago, I lived in Whitefield, and I know there's a couple of us from where from my house, and I had a couple, and I'd seen the husband for some weeks, but they're always in the garden. And I asked his wife, where's her husband? And said, he killed himself. You know, and apparently what he did, he had cancer, terminal, and it just wrote a note telling her that he didn't want to bother her, didn't want to burden her with his problems, and just killed himself. The anger, the fact that he did it, and that's one of the reactions and emotion about suicide, especially when it happens within your family or someone close to you. Anger of the person, but also the other side can be really deep emotion as well, you know, of loss. So yeah, someone can feel they don't want to burden you with their problem, even someone close to you will not tell you what they're about to do. So uncertainty, certainly, there might be uncertainty of a reaction. The fact that previous killing might have been dismissed or avoided. They have told someone before and they totally miss. Because, as I said earlier, someone might not come out to say, you know, that I'm going through myself. They might be acting out, they might be doing things in a way that telling you that something is not quite right, and you've missed it. So I've told you, I've shown you, but you missed it. So then I tell everybody again, because people might avoid talking about it.
This all feels like a massive responsibility for us because it's happened twice to me, really close. And they were 20 years apart, and the first one I was very, very angry about for a lot of years, but I didn't have a lot of learning. It was a shock. There was a letter. The second one, there was no letter. He was very young, we didn't know anything. But this, like when you listen to this, if anyone else feels like I do, honestly, forgive yourself if you didn't see it. Because I think that's making me upset, sorry.
So yeah, sometimes I've been embarrassed or afraid to appear weak. Don't want to burden others, certainly. I might be uncertain about accepting now as well. Yeah, anyway, let's look at some more.
Tell is also a reminder. Tell is also a reminder to any of us who have thoughts of suicide that we should tell someone in the most direct way we can. If you've been thinking about suicide recently, now is a good time to decide whom you will tell. Someone who will take you seriously and will help you. And what is the soonest possible time when you can tell them? Make a mental note of your decision. If you can't decide whom to tell about your thoughts of suicide, you can tell my co-trainer, or our community support resource at the break, or write it on your feedback. Make sure to include a way we can get in touch with you. Just because it is not said directly and openly does not mean that persons with thoughts of suicide are not telling us about their thoughts of suicide in other ways. Let me emphasize that virtually everyone who has had thoughts of suicide told someone, in one way or another, and likely many people about their thoughts of suicide before they acted upon them. The person who suicides without ever doing anything that might hint at that possibility is very, very rare.
Okay, so you might be wondering if they are inviting help, aren't they less serious? And the more direct they are, the less serious they are. You might be thinking that. If someone is asking for help, they're probably not serious about suicide. Well, the fact is that they could be inviting help, for example, because they're just barely holding on to life. That's the reason. And so there's a simple rule that always works. All the things that they're telling you or showing you, they're all serious and can't be dismissed. Okay? So everything you're hearing, everything you're seeing, sensing, feeling, they're all serious and can't be dismissed.
Elvin has a number of meanings. First, it reminds all of us that we are human, and that if we were to have thoughts of suicide, we should tell someone about them. Second, it reminds us that a person with thoughts of suicide is almost always trying to tell us that they have these thoughts. Tell also suggests to us that they are inviting us to tell them that we recognize that they want help. What we see, hear, sense, and learn about from them makes us think about the possibility of suicide. We call these invitations as a way to remind us that they expect a response. Just as with every other kind of invitation, we at least need to say no. For a help me with suicide invitation, no is not something that you will want to do, especially once you know what to do. We are much more willing to accept invitations when we have reason to expect a positive outcome.
So what might be some of these invitations? What might someone be telling you, showing you? What might you be seeing or hearing or sensing from that person?
Well, you turn around and say, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't bear this often, so for this to be saying that.
Someone said that you know, they can't take it anymore. Yeah.
Do not help. Like a cry for help.
Yeah. Or
sometimes, sorry, from the DWP perspective, from some of my colleagues, they might approach you and say things to you in writing, in the journal, and the messaging you do. And in my experience, sometimes when we've responded to that and got in contact with somebody, they've not told anybody in their life, that their family or friends. So that telling was came to me quite strong there, because I've always been, have you told anybody about this? Have you told anybody, and your family members about this? And sometimes they'll say they haven't, and try to encourage them to try and do that can be quite strong, I think, because they come to us as because we're faceless and we're nothing to do with their actual life. They might say something in the messaging, so to try and get them to tell somebody else that's not authority can be quite strong.
yeah.
You can find that they can write it, but then can't talk.
Yeah, they write it in the journal, you see, they're not saying it to you, and you pick it up in the messages, and then you can kind of, something's not right here.
Yeah.
So we get the no more right now, sorry okay now because it's on message, they're not having to verbalise it.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I get the question that you then ask when you see that, or if you hear someone say something, you'll be asking, could suicide be involved in it? Are they asking for help to prevent suicide? And there might well be. So it's worth checking out again.
Talking to a stranger is more easy than family member, because when I was diagnosed, I kept that news to myself for nearly 4 weeks because I didn't know how to break that to my family members. Because my kids were going through tests, exam and things like that, so I didn't even have the guts to even say to anybody at home. Everybody knew I work, but nobody's at home for nearly 4 weeks. So it's really hard to break bad news to your so close family. So it's difficult.
It can be.
When we do say to our claimant, have you discussed that with your family members, right? And if they turn around and say no, we should understand why they haven't done that. It's not something they're trying to hide from them. It's just protect them going through the same pain as they are going through. It is.
Okay.
Let's see.
Just a minute. Hello. Some years ago, as a therapist, within the faith community, sometimes we can be very naive.
Yeah.
And this young man was reaching out to his uncle, and the uncle fobbed him off. And then a couple of days later, he committed suicide, his nephew committed suicide, and he's still living through that because he said, I would get back to you, and he never did. And when it did happen, his nephew had committed suicide. So I think that sometimes for those of us who are from the faith community, that we have to be very much aware and sensitively aware when our family members sometimes reach out to us.
Yeah.
And because we are so much Holy Ghost filled that we put it aside and we do not acknowledge when our family members are in distress as well. So that is something also you can look at it from a cultural perspective. That doesn't happen in our community. So we have to be very much aware and very much sensitive to when people our friends or family are calling out to us. That young man's life could have been saved if only his uncle had taken time to listen to him. He's gone now, he will not come back. So again, being aware is very wise. Thank you.
I think the gender difference as well. And then if you're a man up, don't be stupid, men don't cry, men are weak. Women do the crying, men get a lot of that as well and go reach out because they're an alpha male within their setup, what their dads are and their grandparents are. Yeah. That's where that figure comes from, that percentage for them.
Yeah, put ourselves together.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I've just got an addition to what everyone else is saying. I think going back to the family and talking about it first, from my experience is families, they don't talk about mental health in general. Not all families. So then talking about suicidal thoughts is just like, no, you don't talk about it, so you don't have the courage. So like a transformational life coach, it's okay to ask that question if they've spoken about their suicidal thoughts to anyone. But again, knowing that families are like, they're there for support, but they have their own baggages, and that's not something they talk about. So giving that person that safety space to you to talk to you as a professional, that it's okay to talk about whatever they're going through because you have that training and you can listen and not just hear what they are saying, but you feel and observe the unspoken words that, that really, they hold a lot of meaning, to give that person an open space to talk about what they haven't spoken to their family and just give them that opportunity to express themselves. So, thank you.
I think as well, when it comes to, When it comes to like reaching out to your family and stuff, I work in a patient setting. I'm studying to be a mental health nurse. I see a lot of people who are struggling. How do you tell like the people that gave birth to you, to people who love you so much that you don't want to be alive? It's going to be a really, really difficult thing for someone to say, I know you brought me into this world, but I want to take myself out of it. It's going to take a lot for someone to feel comfortable to say that to them. And obviously, it would make sense that it's going to be so difficult to say that, because it's not an easy thing to think, never mind to tell the people who love you so much. So when people do reach out to you in your family, obviously it is a big thing to hear. It can be a lot to have on your shoulders as well. But even if you don't think that you can physically give that help and support, you can help them find someone. Because, you know, if you just hear it and go, oh, it'll pass, it's fine, don't worry about it, then, you know, even though it is such a big thing to hear, you need to try and do something. Even if it's not you personally sitting there listening to all those thoughts, you need to help them find someone, because obviously you don't want to just leave it and it be too late.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We don't have the luxury of bad mental health. And so trying to get him to engage in any way with any self-help services is really, really hard, because he just doesn't acknowledge the problem. He's like, do you know where I come from? I've seen my family massacre. Do you know what I've seen? So I can't, I'm not allowed to be depressed. I'm not allowed to have that mental health. How do you deal with that?
Some people have a strong level of resilience, or so they say. You know, but I don't think we can mask it with anything. I don't think we can pretend that we don't go through difficult situations. And so I would try to push it down and try to avoid talking about it or holding it. But it's still there. And of course, people are constantly going through stuff. In my former job, one of my former jobs, I've been a minister for a long time. But when I was working in mental health, we did sessions around resilience and with the African and Caribbean community, and looking at how people come through difficult experiences, and talk about their level of resilience and about their faith and their family or community, that kind of hold them together. But also they talk about the issue around mental health. That is something that you don't talk about. You know, it's taboo, and there's kind of a stigma. Suicide, you know, it's quite another level. So I do understand that some people have this kind of a wall that they don't want, they kind of, that's their barrier, and then decide they're safe and they don't want to penetrate it at all. But I think it's about being there to help, you know, and to advise and to listen, to give support when it's needed. You can't force people to accept help if they don't want to, but you can constantly give them advice and some kind of guidance, you know, where necessary. Okay. I'm just going to try. We've got about 5 minutes for lunch. Is that right for lunch? 5 minutes? Okay.
Hiya. I just wanted to add up to what you were saying today, because like with this African culture now, it's quite difficult for them to accept. I say them because I accept it. For them to accept that mental illness is actually a condition. So with me, I'll give you an example. I struggled with my mental health a lot. And until I saw the right professional help, I realized that I've been struggling with it almost all my life. And I accepted it. But when I was in a very, very dark place, because I know that it's all confidentiality, so it's fine. But the last time I saw my husband, he was chasing me with 2 brand new knives with me and my kids. My son was 9 and my daughter was only 11 months, so she didn't actually see much of it. But my son had to go through counseling, and I had to go through counseling as well. And my mother lives in London, and she used to visit, and every time she came to my house, the first thing she says is, why is your house so dirty? Because she knew I wasn't a dirty person, but I was in a very dark place. I couldn't cook, couldn't clean, couldn't even take care of my own personal hygiene. But then because my son, who was then 10, was going through counseling and understood whatever was happening. Whenever he came home from school, the first thing he asked his mom, have you had your bath? Have you brushed your teeth? And then if I said no, he ran the tap for me, he runs the bath for me. And then he sits behind the bathroom door and waits, because he knows that if he leaves me, I'll go straight back into bed and put the baby on me. So it's more to do with raising awareness, because it took a very long time for my mother to accept it. And I had to go through counseling with her before now that she has accepted it. But even then, she goes like, don't use words like, oh, lack of motivation, lack of this. It's all, it's all white people illness. It is a condition, and we need to be aware of it. It's more about raising awareness and getting people to understand it. Thank you.
Thank you again for those who are sharing life experiences. Having understanding and supporting family is key as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be every member of the family, but having just one person or two persons can be very helpful and supportive. One more and then we're going to stop lunch.
That's all. Many years ago, I moved to Nottingham and I began to train as a counsellor. And at the counselling centre, because if you're going to train as a counsellor, you've got to go through counselling yourself. And I thought, this is really good, this. And at the counselling centre, I'm like, well, why are there no black people? So I actually went out on the streets. I knew why you wouldn't go. I had my ideas why black people don't access counselling. But I went out on the streets with a questionnaire, just got speaking to people, and what came across, or they just confirmed what I was thinking, was there's a huge, you talk about the stigma, so they're thinking, I don't want people to know my business, and they're already dealing with social injustice, and this is just one more thing on top of it. And the men were the worst. I've been having a discussion with my colleague here. Men were the worst for not wanting to talk about it and not wanting to open up. And because when I moved to Nottingham, it's quite a close-knit community, so everybody knew everybody else. So they wouldn't go to a counsellor who knew them, and they were missing this link. So they were going from being ill straight into mental health on drugs that they would never recover from, and missing out this counselling. And I think if you can do something, if you can just intervene in that bit. A lot of them say, I've got my church, I've got this, but it's also getting them to accept somebody else and something else. And there are other ways, but it's not easy to do that because it's ingrained, and it's, I would say it's cultural, because it is that this is your business, you keep your family business to yourself, and but we don't have that. When I was explaining, I was born not far from here in Longsight, and I lived on one road. At the end, my auntie lived, round the corner, another auntie lived. I had any problems, if I couldn't talk to my mum and dad, I'd go to my auntie, the one who spoilt me most, but it doesn't matter. It was somebody there who would sit and listen. That's gone. That nuclear family is gone. And finding somebody who's sympathetic, it's not easy. Some people come, I live in a block of flats now, 150 flats, and people come in, shut the door, you don't know what's happening. You don't know, and they lock the door and we don't see anybody else for days. So it is important, if you see somebody, sometimes just say hello and make that connection. And it is, the lady before said, it's embarrassing if you go in there. It's worse if you don't say something. And also, it's not, somebody said about being strong. People think it's strong to keep this stuff to yourself. It's not. And if you don't, if you don't help them, if you don't say anything, you can't blame yourself as well. It's just try, just say hello, ask them are they okay. Strangers, anybody, just make that connection. You might be the first person that they've spoken to, especially with the pandemic where they've been in the house for days.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And this whole sense of community so important, and I recognize, of course, that things are changing, but not probably quickly enough. There was a time when churches, for example, and wouldn't even deal with mental health. And I know, probably some faith anyway now don't even deal with suicide. I think a few years ago, not very long actually, we were having one participant in one of our 2-day courses, and we were talking about suicide and talking about a member of their family, close member of the family, was a Catholic, who ended their life by suicide, and the priest refused to take the funeral. So that's still there. But things are changing, and I hope it will change quicker so that people can get the help and support that they need. Okay, we're going to take a break, and we're just going to reorganize the...
Feel free to share and share your experiences. Again, if you have any questions and I know we've not managed to come around fully, please do keep a note of them so you don't forget. So now we're going to go into lunchtime, and we're going to do table by table. So if we just start off with the back table here on my left, and if you can see where my colleagues Daniel and Angelo over here, if we can just line up, and then once they finish, then we move on to the next table.
Hiya, I'm Bryony. I'm a student mental health nurse. I've been on placement with CAHN for the past 5 weeks. This event has been really insightful because it tells you about the signs and symptoms of people who are possibly struggling with mental illness that may lead to, possible suicide. It helps with knowing how you can help, even if you don't know what to say to the person. It helps you signpost, crisis services or counselling services or anything like that. It's also giving you advice on how to deal with it yourself if you're feeling suicidal or if you're feeling like someone else talking to you. It's like putting a lot of weight on your shoulders and how you can deal with that, because obviously it's going to be a big amount to hold in your own head and take it home every night. But it's helping with finding out how to look after yourself and looking after other people and keeping everyone as safe as we can. So yeah, it's been really, really good getting to know everyone and hearing everyone else's experiences from different workplaces, personal, it's been really good.
Hello, my name is Janet MacDonald. I'm from the New Testament Church of God. I'm here in my capacity as a volunteer. I work with young people and children, and I have a large family as well. And so I wanted to make sure that I was aware of what suicide, the triggers for suicide, or that I'm not missing the signs for suicide, and that's why I'm here. And it's already got me thinking about conversations I've been having with some people already, and I might have to redress that and maybe go back and speak to them on a deeper level. So yes, I'm glad that I'm here and I'm looking forward to the next session. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julie Poppins. I work for DWP. I'm a disability employment advisor, and in my role I come across supporting work coaches when they might see a customer who might express feelings of self-harm or suicidal thoughts, and sometimes messages that our customers might say that might trigger us to think something's not quite right. So this event is really, really good at raising awareness of the kind of things that you might want to look for in the conversations that we have with people, in the messages we might have from people, that they might be reaching out to get some support, and we might be able to signpost or support them, or just at least get them to talk about their feelings, talk about what it is that's going on in their life that might make them have these feelings, and where they might be able to reach out to get further support. So this event is really, really great at giving us some pointers and tips in doing that. Thank you.
My name is Keisha and I am a staff at DWP. I'm a disability employment advisor and I support not only customers but my colleagues as well with the more difficult cases. And one of the things we face is, customers with those suicidal thoughts, and quite daily, really, we are asked to support them. So when this opportunity came about to come to this training, I got quite a lot of my staff on board, and the department was really grateful to release so many of us today to come to this training. It shows that we are doing the best that we can to support the customers and also to prepare our colleagues as well with what is such a difficult situation. Today the training has been awesome. It has done and it's continuing to prepare us for this kind of role and the task that some of us are facing. And we feel quite lucky and privileged to be here today. So thank you for having us, and we look forward to more of these events.
I'm June Green, and I work at the moment as a health liaison officer for CAHN. I came to do this training this morning because it felt a very important thing to do. If you can just help one person, then it's worth it. And I think too often it's easy to walk past people and not ask what's going on. And that's all you have to do is say hello, how are you? And I think a lot of people need to know that. This course this morning has given a lot to think about how you do these things, because it's not easy to just say how are you. I know it sounds simple, but it's not easy. So at least being here will give you some tools that you can use in future, and that's what I'm looking forward to, learning a bit more about it. I might even go on and do further training because I just think it's so important. Having had personal experience of it, it's something that you don't want to happen to anybody else. So if you can help, then do so.
Hi, my name is Naomi. I work for the DWP. I'm a universal credit work coach. So I'm here obviously to find out about suicide. We have a lot of claimants that come in with different sort of mental health. We don't always know how to give them the support, so it's good to find out ways to at least be aware of of suicide, and also within the black community as well. And it's nice that CAHN have arranged this. It's been a nice event, and especially with the representation with the food and just getting everybody together. It's been a nice event. Thank you.
So I'm Herbie McKenzie from the New Testament Church of God, currently based in Dudley, West Midlands. Really just a privilege and honor to be here today to deliver this training around suicide alertness, something that I'm very much interested in, something that I've been training for a number of years around suicide prevention, and today, particularly the first time in over 2 years since I've done this training, and so far, it's going extremely well. The audience has been absolutely fantastic. Participants have asked questions, have shared their lived experiences, and it shows really the level of interest and excitement about suicide prevention and wanting to help. And I hope and pray that the skills that people will gain from today will go a long way in not just supporting themselves, especially in their workplaces, but also to support those that they are supporting and those they care for. But it's been absolutely tremendous so far this time. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Hi, just to introduce myself, I work for Department of Work and Pension, and I work as a disability employment advisor. At the moment, I'm covering 2 offices. About this event, it's just an amazing event, and I think we should have a facility, and it's a really good awareness these people are doing here. And it's a really, we need these kind of events quite often because we need to have this awareness for everybody. It's a really good event. I've learned a lot from it, and I think I can definitely benefit out of this the session we're having. It's a great opportunity, and I would definitely appreciate the organization. It's a perfect opportunity for everyone. So keep doing the good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and rested, refreshed.
I know some people have been asking about training, the 2-day assist, which is assistant to applied suicide intervention skills training. And that's it's 2 days, very intensive 2-day course. That is delivered by a number of organizations, some based here in Manchester, and you can, and some in Lancashire. And they will also do the safe talk one, which is the one that I'm kind of doing here. But, if you want to actually do it with them as well, and do some of the practical stuff they might do. You can contact mine in Salford. I don't know whether they're currently doing any of them, but there's another organisation based in Preston, and they do training. In fact, I've seen that they're delivering a training in Oldham on the next week, the 2-day assist next week in Oldham, and they're called Mental Health Learning. Got their telephone number there and their email address, so you can contact them for the 2-day assist. That's a very, very good course. I would recommend that. But if you're going to do it, just be prepared for 2 days, and 2 days of very intensive training around suicide. It's all about suicide.
Big question, government department, is it chargeable?
Yes.
No, we've got no chance. Anyone else that gets that, let us know.
Yeah, you're going to pay for it. The 2-day one, it could be some organizations charge to 200 quid, anything from probably 200 to 250 for the 2 days. You get lunch and go. They charge for the safe talk, which might be about 100 quid or something like that. Some people have also been asking for the TFT, the training for trainers, where you can become a trainer and assist for this one, Safe Talk. That is done. There's an organization called Grassroots. They're based in Brighton. Brighton is not far actually. Joking. It is pretty far when you think of it. But they are very, very good. And that's where I did my safe talk. I did my assist, my assist. I don't know where I did it. In some place somewhere in Yorkshire. I remember. But that's very good to do. You can actually go on the Living Works website and find out where they are training sessions being held in the UK. But training for trainers is very good. Again, for the first part of it, where you're able to do the assist and the suicide awareness, which is another program, just to raise general awareness about suicide. It's a 7-day training. The Safe Talk is a 3-day training. But you need to do the assist first and become a practicing trainer before they can do the Safe Talk. And there's another one called Suicide to Hope, which is another one. There's one I think with Suicide and Faith. I think they do different programs. But it's worth checking these out and find out more if you're interested in getting more training around helping people. Okay, what I'm going to do, because we finished at 2:30, I'm trying to finish by 2:20, so we can just round up. And I've got so much more to do. I may have to be invited back. That's okay. But then again, those of you who are going to go off and do the Safe Talk, you might not need me back. So what I'm going to do is quickly run through the rest of the first part and then do as much as I can in the second part, just to give you a taste, because the whole idea today is to just raise some awareness and give us some basic skills for you to go off and start helping and supporting people with thoughts of suicide. That's the reason why I did that first session this morning with quizzes and a general overview of suicide. Okay.
So we were talking about some of the signs or invitations that you might see, and I wanted to hear as much from my co-trainer Karen as possible. So hence I'm just going to go through this and let you listen to what he has to say. So things like, as we were talking about, things you might see, someone being careless and moody, withdrawing, using alcohol, drugs, or more. Things you might hear, someone talking about being alone, being burdensome, there's no purpose to life, no purpose to living anymore, they just want to escape, and so on. And things you might sense, that sense of desperation with people, or sense of hopelessness, just numb, ashamed as well. Things you might learn about someone, abuse, rejection, losses. That's a big thing, especially in mental health. Loss is one of the bigger things in terms of mental health, and the reason why someone might have thoughts of suicide as well. Or loss, not necessarily talking about someone losing a loved one to death. Anything to do with losing one job, broken relationship, things like that, even losing one pet, it's a loss. And that can be a big thing for some people. So just be mindful of when people talking about loss, losing something. Yeah, that can be a big thing for them. Okay? People's suicide experiences as well. So things to see, hear, sense, learn about. See actions, hear, people talking, sense their feelings, learn about their life situations.
So this list of common invitations does not include everything that might be an invitation. Human beings are creative. Having thoughts of suicide does not change that fact. It might even make one more creative. A person with thoughts of suicide may invite help by doing the most uninviting of things, like getting in trouble, picking an argument with you, etc. A person with thoughts of suicide may invite you to help in ways that are uniquely their own. For example, something is not right if you ever hear me say something negative about my mother-in-law. Wouldn't it be great if everyone felt safe to tell someone that they were thinking about suicide openly and directly? However, you now understand the idea of invitations well, even the less direct ones. You will be able to tell a person what you saw, heard, sensed, or learned about their invitations for help.
Okay, so one might be wondering, would it just make sense if we, for example, just wondering about those people who are more likely to have thoughts of suicide? Would we make it easier to spot people with thoughts of suicide if we knew who these people were? I said earlier that you might not know who they are. And so, yeah, of course, if someone walks around with a label, or something on their forehead or whatever, and say, having thoughts of suicide is great, you can spot them. But oftentimes, you just have to learn to see, to hear, to learn, to sense, and just pick up those, like the invitations. Invitations, the reason why we use the word invitations is because they're inviting help. Inviting help. We might call them signs or signals, but they're inviting help. They're actually saying to you, I need help. I'm telling you that I'm in trouble and I need help. And sometimes they don't even know that they are sending out these invitations. It's not like, as I said, someone might just stand up and say, look, I need help. Or someone's thought of suicide. Is that part of them that wants to live? That might be just sending out those invitations, inviting you to assist, to support them.
The best way to tell the person with thoughts of suicide that you have been paying attention to their possible invitations is to ask directly about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? The A of TALK stands for ask and refers to asking directly about thoughts of suicide. I know that when I was at risk, I thought I was telling everyone I knew about it in my own way. It wasn't until someone asked me about my thoughts of suicide in a direct way that I was finally able to talk about what I so wanted to talk about in a direct way.
Okay, so if you're wondering, you might be more than wondering at this point. This being aware of invitations, and particularly this asking, might lead to someone losing their job. Because that was a fear that in an organization they found, especially depends on the industry or the occupation you're in, having thought of suicide might lead to someone losing their job. Pretty good reason to dismiss and avoid if you're thinking that. So you might see the invitation and you might not want to ask it just in case the person gets into trouble and loses their job. But actually, the official policy is that any person with thought of suicide really should be given assistance to address their situation and help them return to work. Mental health now in the workplace is a very important thing, and a lot of organizations or employers are now taking that on board. It's not like in the old days when you probably would be sacked or be discriminated against and not be employed. People are taking this seriously, so it's important to address it even in the workplace.
The best way for you to tell the difference between a person thinking about suicide or not thinking about suicide is to ask if suicide is connected with what you have seen, heard, sensed, or learned about. Whatever it is that caused you to think suicide might be involved could just be the way the person is. Could be related to some other problem that they might want help with and not related to suicide at all. No one's awareness is perfect and no list is complete. That is why you have to ask. Let's watch how easily this can be done. These scenes are also brief, so watch carefully.
There you are. Wonder what was going on when you didn't have anything to say in class. You want to go somewhere and talk?
I have the solution. Sorry, I need to get going. I gotta get home before anyone else does.
Why do you need to be home alone?
It's got something I gotta do. It'll solve everything. It'll be fine.
You're not talking in class? Got the solution? Get home before everyone else? Could you be thinking of suicide?
And if it was?
So you are? Let's go over here and talk.
Okay. Says her prescription isn't working. Can't seem to shake the depression and, how did she put it? Other things.
Any idea what that is?
Maybe suicide?
My hunch too. I'll say you mentioned something that alerted me about her concerns and use that as a reason to talk to her about suicide.
Okay, agreed.
So Helen and I are splitting up. No, you're kidding. You gonna be okay?
No.
And yes. Well, so you're moving out. Do you want to borrow my truck? No. Well, anything I can do to help, just let me know. I've got it figured. I have a way out of this mess. What is that? Just end it all. Are you talking about suicide? Yes.
Okay, so what could we do to discourage a direct answer? What could we say? How would someone feel if we said, you're not thinking of doing anything silly, are you? What do you think might happen there? If we said that to someone.
They'd feel even more isolated. Makes them feel like their feelings are invalid, like what they're feeling is stupid, or the thoughts they're going through aren't normal or whatever. Yeah, it makes them feel like it's just something. Yeah, it just makes them feel like the thoughts that they're thinking aren't supposed to be happening, and it's stupid and it's silly, and it just dismisses everything that they're thinking.
Yeah. Well, what if we were to say you're not thinking of harming yourself? Would that necessarily give us the answer that we are looking for?
Yeah, you're using negative. You're saying you're not asking them. You're not asking them an open question.
So again, it's invalidating them and making them think that they shouldn't be thinking of harming themselves.
Well, you could say, you can ask that question, but you wouldn't tell you whether they're thinking about harming themselves by suicide or not. And I think the point I want to get to is that it's important to be clear that it is suicide that you're talking about. So harming yourself could mean anything, including suicide. But you don't know whether they're going to just cut themselves or do some other self-harming stuff. What you need to know is that this person is thinking of suicide. Yeah? And it's clear that I know when we did the 2-day training and we had to practice that and get people to, and even this course as well, there's a point where you actually practice it. There's a specific way in which you actually ask the question. It's important that suicide needs to be the thing on the table, so there's no doubt. And in that case, we're able to offer the proper support to the person. So when you ask about suicide in some direct way, the person with thoughts of suicide is likely to feel disregarded, or that you are uncomfortable with dealing with what they're dealing with, which is suicide. So you need to be out there clearly that they know that you want to talk about suicide. You are comfortable with talking about suicide. But if they have some uncomfortable feeling about it, not sure, should I approach you or not, how you might feel, mentioning suicide, they might not want to come for. But once they know that you are clear about talking about it, then they will come forward. So one of the things you might say is that sometimes, because you've seen all these things, you've seen, you've heard, you've sensed, you've learned about certain things with the person, and you might say sometimes when people are missing work, depends on the occasion, of course, this is an example. Sometimes when people are missing work or worried about things and withdrawing from friends and family, they are thinking about suicide. That's usually the case. Yeah. Or you're thinking about suicide, because I've noticed these things happening to you too. It's happened to other people, and they have been having thought of suicide when they were thinking, when they were doing, when they were feeling like that, and when they were in those situations. So, you're now in that situation. or you're thinking about suicide. So it's a good way to actually get the help.
So first, you keep your eyes, ears, and other senses open. Be aware of what is going on around you. When you see, hear, sense, or learn things that might be possible invitations, ask directly about thoughts of suicide. As you can see, there is another advantage to naming invitations and then asking about suicide. It communicates the things that you have seen, heard, sensed, or learned about that are causing you to ask at the same time as you are asking. It is not just a question you are asking from out of the blue. You have reasons for asking that you share at the same time as you ask.
Okay. So you might be wondering, what if they answer in a way that is not clear or in a way that I don't believe What would you do?
Ask them to elaborate.
Yeah. I mean, in the two-day one that we do, there's a scenario where the question was asked, and the person said no, or answered the way like what, asking me that question, But the helper then persisted, and by asking again, more directly, actually got affirmative. Because sometimes, the person will be like a surprise, to asking me that question. Or if they feel a little bit less confident, they might not want to answer you directly, but by being persistent. Because if that's what you're feeling, you're sensing, you're seeing, you're hearing, it's important to just push a little bit if the initial answer is not clear or you don't believe it. But if you do believe them, then you don't need to do anything more about suicide. If you don't believe them, then you come back to the invitations, come back to the things that you've seen, you've heard them saying, your sense about them. Just come back to those things again and ask them about suicide again. Okay, so it's important then to listen.
And if they answer yes to your direct and open question about thoughts of suicide, but then, don't worry. It is not difficult to respond to this now obvious request for help. The person with thoughts of suicide almost always wants to talk about why suicide has come into their life. I certainly did. For me and for them, someone has finally taken up their invitation, provided an opportunity for them to talk directly and openly about suicide. Guess what the L stands for in talk? That's right, listen. And we mean just that. You don't need to convince them to live, find the magic key, or solve all or any of the problems that cause them to think about suicide. Almost all persons with thoughts of suicide have not fully decided that they want to die. Indeed, most have not even decided that they don't want to live. Instead, they want to talk to somebody about not wanting to live. Let me say that again. Instead, they want to talk to somebody about not wanting to live. That is certainly what I wanted. The typical situation is even more encouraging than that. Persons with thoughts of suicide, more often than you might think, can talk themselves out of acting on their thoughts of suicide. If they just have someone who will listen and keep the conversation going. That doesn't mean that you don't do the next step. It just means that the keep safe step will be easier. You start the listening step this way. Let's talk about this. I am listening.
Simple. It's that's what I said, really. Because once they've said yes, suicide is involved, then you need to talk about suicide. Let's talk about this. Because we need to know what has brought them to this place, what is going on in their lives, what's happening. And be prepared to listen as well.
You end the listening step by saying, "This is important." Once you have heard enough to agree with this closing statement, say it, and move on to the next step. If in starting to move on, they cannot acknowledge that suicide is important, say, "This is important" again, with emphasis, and move on to the last step. Their inability to agree says even more clearly that this is important. Their inability to say that they need help is as clear as they can be in saying that they need help.
So, you might be wondering at this point, wait a minute, what if they just get into talking and won't stop? What do you do? I mean, that's a very good question, because that can happen too. But you don't need to listen forever. Really, not a long time at all, not to listen for a long time. You just need to listen long enough for them to realize that they have a lot to say, and for you to get a sense of what further help is needed. This is being alert to the fact that someone is having thoughts of suicide, and being able to signpost that person onto somebody who's able to offer them more direct support. Those of you, if any one of you, or those of you then go on to do the 2-day training, you'll be in that absolute perfect position to offer them the kind of help and support that they'll need, talk them through and what they're going through, and offer them the help, and maybe able to refer them on to somebody else as well. Okay. So let's look at the
K of talk is for the keep safe step. Connect them as soon as you can. Do not promise to keep this a secret. Indeed, if they won't allow you to connect them with someone who knows how to complete a suicide intervention, tell them that it is important for you to do this regardless. You might also want to say something like, "I have to do this. I'm not going to take a chance on losing."
So, important, never ever keep a secret regarding suicide. No one said to you, someone said to you, "Well, I'm thinking of killing myself, but I don't want anyone to know. Don't tell anyone." There and then you have to say, "I'm sorry, I can't keep this." And for those of you who are counselors, you will know how important that is. That's something you have to say. You just can't keep them. You have to, because that person, you need to get help for that person. And that's when, actually, because really the person is safe, and you can only keep that person safe if you refer them on to somebody and let others know what they're going through. And if you're wondering, what if they don't think the situation is serious, or don't think extra help is needed, because that might be a situation too. I think it's important to let them know that extra help, I'll let them know the reason why extra help is needed. And that's really, for both of you, you need someone who can look at the risk and then help them to decide what to do about it. So don't carry the burden by yourself. Just invite others as well who can also help that person to keep safe. So now it's time to solve all the problems that the person might be having that actually led them to be thinking of suicide. Because really, if it's to do with housing, I mean, they're homeless. You can't miracle up a house for them, but you might be able to, to help them in some ways. So it's a time really to do something that will keep the person safe. And keep safe means that might be used to harm themselves, keep them away from that. And as I said, do not promise secrecy. Thing is, never put yourself in danger. Get a call for help instead. So keep safe also means keeping yourself safe. There are connections in the community as well, and what I said earlier about being able to find out what agencies are around locally that you can contact if you need to sample somebody. Oftentimes people will up their GP and get an appointment to talk to their GP, but these days I'm finding it extremely hard to get an appointment to be a local GP. Absolutely. I was going to see my doctor in the past 2 years. Yeah. That's, it's worth trying. Or, we always say to people, go to A&E, but then again, sometimes it's not the best place to actually send somebody. Okay. Just flashing those up because there's also for helpers there in the community. So, any questions before I just move on quickly to the final section before we finish? Yeah.
I have something to say, but it's not a question. It's just a recent experience that I had, which what you are saying now is making me think. So I had this consultation with a lady. The referral was from the father. And as I was talking to this lady, I realized that when I talked about the future or what she wants in the next day or so, she just cried and cried. I felt like there was more to what she was telling me, and I asked her, are you thinking of hurting yourself? And the crying increased, and I knew there was something there, and I just gave her the space to cry. But as she was crying, she cried for a long time, and I was just reminding her that she's in a safe space and things like that. So when she calmed down, she said, yeah, she had tried to kill herself. So we worked on a plan together. But what I found really tricky was that she is not in the UK, she's in Africa. And she had been accessing counseling. There was no, she had stopped the counseling. And I found it really tricky because I was thinking, this is in my hands. How do I go on with it? I explained about confidentiality with her, and I said, if there's any information, this was at the beginning of the session, that if she presents any information that I feel herself or someone is at a great risk, then I'll have to break confidentiality. So I asked if at the moment she is thinking of the suicide after she attempted previously. So she refused. We did a safety plan, and on the safety plan I said she can text me whenever she wants, because I found it really hard trying to connect who is working with her. And again, it's not in the UK that that connection will be easy. So as you're talking, it's really getting me to think of other ways that I could have handled that situation. But over time, we put a thing, she is now regularly texting me because her parents knew nothing about the suicide attempt that she tried two years ago, and she still has those thoughts. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. It's very useful just to bring again your life experiences, whether directly or in the workplaces, help part of the learning and understanding of how you might help somebody with some of the things that you're facing there in the workplace and how you might help someone. Okay, so what we've looked at or just learned was the talk step that shows how helping can be done. And it really does seem common sense, and I suspect that we all agree that helping should be done. But why is it often not done? And the next session, or this next session that I will do, is to give you a chance to clear up some of the issues that might cause you to dismiss, or avoid doing what needs to be done. There's also an opportunity to practice, but we're probably going to first, not be able to do that today. But let's hear from Corey what he has to say about our next phase.
Knowing what to do is one part of being willing to do what needs to be done. Another, and perhaps more important part, is to free yourself of any misleading ideas that will cause you to dismiss, or avoid suicide. Just before that, let's make sure we are on the same page about the meanings of missing, dismissing, and avoiding. Here are our definitions. Miss, dismiss, and avoid. Normal human processes, aren't they? You can't pay attention to everything in the world. You have to miss and dismiss some, or else you would become overloaded. And many things should be avoided. On the other hand, there are things you don't want to miss, dismiss, and avoid. I know that when I was first feeling down and occasionally thinking about suicide, I didn't even notice it. I missed it. When I first started recognizing that I was having thoughts of suicide, I dismissed them as not serious. Not too much later, I tried to avoid them, except that I couldn't in the evening when I was alone. Just like many others, I had ideas that were untrue or misleading about suicide, and these kept me from recognizing suicide, taking it serious, or regarding it as a life and death issue. But I will always be able to separate the truth from these fictions now.
So there are all kinds of mistaken ideas surrounding suicide that cause us to dismiss, or avoid it. For example, miss is the fact that we don't connect with suicide. We don't consider the possibility of suicide. We've seen things, we've heard things, we've sensed, but we don't connect those things with suicide, or we don't think there's a possibility of suicide. Often we talked about people who are maybe they're coming to work and they're well dressed, they're very good at their jobs, and or they're probably living in a nice house and whatever, etc. A lot going for them. And you say, well, such and such a person could be thinking of suicide, wouldn't harm themselves or hurt themselves in their life by suicide. And kind of have the stereotype of individuals, so you don't connect some of the things that might be going on in some people's life with suicide. So therefore you miss it. It's very important not to do that. The other thing is that we might dismiss, because we see the invitations, signs, and it means that the person is not serious, again, because maybe they've done this too often. Maybe suicide is so rare that it could possibly be happening here. Again, what I said earlier, that only certain kinds of people who would end their life by suicide. And only people acting very strangely would be thinking of ending their life by suicide. So we dismiss it again. The other thing is that we can avoid suicide, because we think if we intervene in the situation, we might make it worse. It's like, oh, if I ask them about suicide, they might just start thinking about suicide. The other thing is that we might not know what to do. We kind of think if we get involved, we kind of hope the kind of worms and might be half our depths here. We might be too scared to help, too scared to catch suicide. It can be contagious. Don't want to interfere. Don't want the responsibility. Again, I've got my own problems. I don't want to take on someone else's. So let's not ask. Let's not get involved. And my own troubles as well. So these are important things as well that we need to think about. So in this next clip, let's look at another example of missing, dismissing, or avoiding. And let's see if we can figure out what ideas might be behind that result.
Answering to me again. Well, honey, it's not like you to give in to that panic so easily.
Everything will be okay. I just have to get to my apartment. There's something I have to do.
You sure?
Sure.
Okay, so what's going on there? Why this mom is not exploring more of what her daughter might be saying? Something clearly is going on. Why might she not explore more of what her daughter is saying?
Ignorance of the signs.
Yeah. Is she missing, dismissing, or avoiding?
You don't want to think about your own child and you feel like you don't engage with it in a manner.
So it's still avoiding. Yeah.
It's also a miss as well, she's not recognising some of the things that she's saying.
She's missing. Yeah. There's some missing there. She's dismissing suicide because her daughter couldn't possibly be thinking of ending her life by suicide. But she'll be avoiding it. Does she think she might be too busy, don't want to deal with it?
She probably didn't even think about her daughter considering suicide. She probably just thought, oh, she'll be fine, she gets through this or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think she's missing it because the message didn't get through to her.
I think she could be in denial.
Let's get the clip back again. I think it's one of my favorite ones because I think it's so important.
Mom, I think I'm just going to quit and go home. The panic's getting to me again.
Well, honey, it's not like you to give in to that panic so easily.
Everything okay. I just have to get to my apartment. There's something I have to do.
You sure?
Sure.
It's not a new thing. She said it's not like you to give in to it so easily. Yeah.
Would I be worried as a father if my child said that to me at work?
Yeah.
I'll be out the door like a shot.
Yeah.
No, probably knowing what I know now, probably I'm more alert. Yeah. But it's important, isn't it, to pick up on those things. It might not be your child, but it might be somebody in your workplace. It might be somebody, if you're a manager, it might be one of your staff. Yeah, phoning in, I can't come into work today, or probably at work, so I've got to get home because this is what I've got to do quickly. And you might know that I might be going through difficulties and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying really is these things that you might need to look at so that you don't miss or dismiss or avoid suicide. Let's look at the same scene again with more alertness, more awareness.
Mom, I think I'll just quit and go home. Panic's getting to me again.
Honey, it's not like you to give in to those feelings so easily.
Everything will be okay. I just need to get to my apartment. There's something I have to do.
Okay, something about the way you say that just doesn't sound right.
Please, tell me what's going on. I just can't take it anymore, Mom.
Take what?
Life.
You sound overwhelmed.
Are you thinking about suicide? Yes.
What a difference. By opening on what you're hearing, what you're sensing there, you're able to get to the bottom of it. Listening, asking the question. Okay. So it's important just to ask when someone is, showing or feeling or saying they're sometimes thinking about suicide, or you're thinking about suicide. By listening, let's talk about this. It is important, and then being able to keep the person safe. There's another scene here. I'm just going to show them back to back.
You look upset. Is there anything I can do to help?
No. There's too much involved. There's got to be a simpler solution.
Like?
Like taking some much needed time off work and going somewhere nice with my husband.
That sounds nice.
Yes. Yes, it does. Thanks for taking an interest.
upset. Is there anything I can do to help?
No, there's too much involved. There's got to be a simpler solution.
That sounds serious.
It is.
Life and death serious? Like, you might be thinking of suicide?
No, not that serious. I need to quit my job. I'm not doing so well at it. And if I don't, it could lead to the end of my marriage. I really need to talk to someone.
Glad to hear it's not about suicide. Do you know who you could talk to? I might know somebody who could help.
I do have someone I can talk with. Thank you.
Okay, so sometimes we kind of worry about dealing with suicide, and that worry, can really, it gets in the way, because in that situation, you see, there's no harm really for the person to actually ask about suicide, with that woman who was sitting on the bench. And of course, if you did ask and suicide is not involved, then that's fine. It's not harm. In fact, it didn't mind being asked about suicide. And it was dealt with in a very respectful way. So we shouldn't really get in a situation where we feel, well, I don't want to ask about suicide because the person might get upset, especially if they're not thinking about suicide and I'm asking. It's like, I'm accusing them of doing something that they're not doing. It's important just to ask if you have particular concern. I'm going to look at the possibility of one more thing, because there is an issue here about, I think we live in a society where it's hard to really, we don't want to be nosy, we're getting people's business and asking people about things. But I think there's an importance, the importance of being nosy in the situation is absolutely, quite clear when you're dealing with mental health or we're dealing with people who might be having thoughts of suicide. And so we want to look at two possible reasons here for not being alert. And one is a reluctance to be nosy, and a tendency to think that the role of a suicide alert helper is bigger than it need be. So let's hear from Karen.
A willingness to be nosy is an important part of being alert, as I suspect you already sensed. The key to justifying being helpfully nosy is your awareness that suicide might be involved. Remember that there was a time when driving while intoxicated and abusing children was not talked about and more or less a private thing. No longer. We also wanted to be okay to ask questions about the possibility of suicide. It's okay to listen and watch carefully. In essence, I want you to assume, until proven otherwise, that anything might be connected to suicide. Because human beings are social creatures, we all have the capacity to read other people to some degree. Thus, we are all able to recognize when others are concerned about something, sometimes even when they are not very clear about it. Use that potential. Pay attention to what you see, hear, sense, and learn about. Always be looking for invitations to ask about suicide.
Any comments? Questions?
you may not see yourself as a person who would be good at something like talk. In particular, it is the listening step that might seem most foreign. But there are ways to keep that concern from stopping you. As I said earlier about the limits to alert listening, you don't need to convince them to live, find the magic key, or solve all or any of the problems that cause them to think about suicide. Just let them release the feeling and energy stored up in their concern about suicide. Say to yourself, it is not my job to literally save their life. My job is to get them in touch with someone who can help them save their own life. Note, I didn't even say that the other person is going to save their life. I said the suicide intervention caregiver would help them save their own life. They can find a way to kill or hurt themselves if they are determined to do so. Ultimately, it is the person's decision. You can be part of the process that helps them to prevent injury or death, but the person with thoughts of suicide ultimately has to do some of the work. So there is nothing magical for you to do in the listening step. But if you still feel you don't know anything about listening or how it helps, just go on to the keep safe step. Keeping the person with thoughts of suicide safe means that other things, like more listening, can be done by someone else.
Okay. Question? Or comments? So let's remind ourselves then why suicide alertness is important and why we want to learn it. Some helpful, some things that are not helpful when you are actually supporting somebody, judgmental. People feel that they're being judged or will be judged, might not want to open up to you. They might not want you to come to you at all. Angry, negative, in a state of panic. Someone told you that they're going to end their life by suicide and you start panicking. That's not very helpful at all. Or giving advice, that's very unhelpful. Being impatient. These are very unhelpful characteristics. I'm sure you could add to that list there if you want to. What would be helpful? If you just look at the unhelpful characteristics, what would be helpful?
Being non-judgmental.
Calm.
Calm.
Positive. Not panic. Don't give it advice. Be patient.
Oh yeah, the opposite of the above. Okay, let's look. Sensitive, caring as well, direct. Yeah, definitely not panicking, being calm, not judgmental, being patient with the person. Being patient means listen to the person. Someone might just sit there, don't want to talk at all. You ask them a question, they don't want to say anything. You know, in the 2-day one, you don't do that. So, let's try that. You know, sometimes when people are missing work, worried about things, withdrawing from friends and family, they are thinking about suicide. Or you thinking about suicide. So those really are some of the things that I want to talk about today in terms of, there's a practical session, but we don't have time for that, where you will just practice some of what we've learned today. But the basic things really is just about being able to identify some of the things that people are going through, some of the things that they might be saying, things they might be hearing, you're sensing, you're seeing in individuals, and having that confidence and skill to actually talk about, to ask first of all if they are thinking about suicide, and if they are, just to listen to what might be going there for them. And I said earlier, you don't really need them to tell you the whole story, just enough so that you can offer some support, some help in keeping them safe, signposting them to somebody who can even help them further. But keeping them safe is not just, it's also keeping yourself safe as well. Okay? I'm going to stop there and just ask if there's any questions.
Not necessarily a question, more just a comment. I know earlier people were speaking about like how heavy it can be on your shoulders hearing or seeing something else. I just want to say that, because obviously I do work in inpatient settings, I've seen people try to kill themselves, which is a big thing to see. It's okay if it does go home with you at first. I'm still taking it home with me at some times, which I know I shouldn't, but it's okay for it to be on your mind. You will eventually learn to, you know, kind of have that switch off, still be compassionate, still care about other people, obviously, but just know when to not take it home. It will eventually come, but you know, like seeing and hearing things that are, like, can be very disturbing, you know, it does take a toll on you, and that's normal. It's meant to happen. You know, if you didn't have any sympathy or empathise with people who were going through stuff, or if you saw people going through stuff, you know, that's not normal. Like it is okay to feel like it is a lot on your shoulder. So just wanted to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely important. Thank you for that. Because part of the process, you know, that one goes through, certain things does not really leave you immediately. You just have to process all of that, and it can take time. Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Just to go back to what one gentleman over there asked earlier on, and it was around self-care. I think from my experience, something that has really, really helped me with my mental health is something called mental fitness, which is a training that you recognize those voices in your head and where they come from, because they are different. It's like personalities, but they are not. But they've just given them different names, and to know, identify, because it says if you have a negative thought that dwells in your head for more than 60 seconds, then those characters take over, and then you just go on that circle on and on. However, if you learn to identify those, they call them saboteurs. If you are able to identify those saboteurs, then there's a training that you do, which is called mental fitness, that you are able to suppress those negative thoughts, and then you activate your sage, which is the calm, the creativity, the other side of you, and then like that you will be able to switch from those negatives, even if it's experience that you are going through or whatever is in your head, to switch to the calm side of you. And this aspect, it says it takes up to 2 minutes of exercise, and it really calms you down. Thank you.
Just wanted to say thank you so much. That was interesting, and this is why I'm saying I think I'm quite lucky in that sense that I can switch off. I know where to stop, I know where my limits are. But when you deal with the people like day in, day out, sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 people who suffer from, and I'm talking about proper mental health, anxiety, depression, and worse. Sometimes you get pulled into suicidal conversations. You have to act on it. This is not planned, so basically you just get on it straight away, and you have to act straight away. I'm one of the lucky ones, like you said. These things comes into my mind. I can switch off. I can, yes, have a conversation with myself, which is great, but it's just sometimes those, like 60 seconds or even 1 minute, half a minute, those thoughts sometimes when it gets too much, who do you talk to? So this is where I was going, but thank you so much. That was really, really good information. Thank you.
When I'm at work and I I've seen things. When I've seen things, obviously we have debriefs if we have seen someone, you know, like I've seen people try and hang themselves, I've seen people cutting themselves, you know, horrific things. We always have a debrief with one of the senior managers or, you know, something like that, so they'd speak about what you saw, how you feel about what you saw, all that kind of stuff. So definitely, if it's not already in place, I don't know if it is or not, definitely speak about that. And then they also try and say, like we teach this to the patients that we speak to, but obviously it works for everyone, mindfulness. You can find videos on YouTube, it's as simple as that, like it's just helping your mind relax and just trying to take it off all the thoughts. It can take 2 minutes, there's longer ones that are like half an hour, you know, it helps put your mind at rest and try and stop those thoughts because, like I say, when I've seen some really violent things, like I get the images in my head about it, but you know, just that mindfulness of like just taking 2 minutes out of your shift on your break or nip into the toilet or whatever, just to have that mindfulness and just think, you know, this isn't like, you know, you're helping in some kind of way, but it's okay if I just need to take that step out. Like my job is to help people, but I also need to help myself, and I won't be able to help other people if I'm not looking after myself.
No, I really appreciate that. And mindfulness session, I think this is one of the key things which I have been adopting.
Yeah.
Which is really good. Like you said, 1 minute, 2 minute session, yeah, you can just switch yourself off. You can probably go outside, go to the toilet, somewhere, just sit there for 2 minutes, switch off, think about, probably Bahamas or something. But this is something you can do. But thank you so much. That's another good tip. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody, and you've been absolutely amazing. And I hope you've learned quite a lot today, and we'll take that with you and support those who you're working with, those you know, and even support yourself as well. And information there, if anyone really interested in doing the 2-day assist, or even do a safe talk where you can do all the practical stuff. So, but if you want to become a trainer as well, you can do that. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Bishop. How did everyone find the training? Okay? Good. Thank you so much, Bishop, for giving out for your morning and afternoon today. It's been really lovely having you this afternoon, or morning and afternoon. So now we've given out some event evaluation forms on your tables, I believe, in the centre. So please can we all complete that? Just let us know your feedback. How did you find today? What would you like to see for our next training? Is there anything we've missed, anything that we didn't cover that you would have loved to hear from us? Please do let us know. And once you completed it, I believe my team in the yellow lanyards, please can you just collect those forms and just get that feedback. It's very essential. Just to let you know as well, we are again with the Caribbean African Health Network. Please do not shy away from us. We're always here if you need any support, if you need access to any of our services. We do have some events coming up that we'd love again for you to be a part of, so feel free to register to those. We have our CAHN Health Hour. That is every Saturday morning from 11 to 12:15, and it's actually on Zoom and it's streamed to YouTube and Facebook. And every week we discuss again different health-related topics that is affecting our community. This month we are covering, I believe it's diabetes, type 1 and type 2 diabetes again. It's very prevalent within our black community. The type of foods that we eat, how we were monitoring, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So that program is every week, and we're always discussing different topics. And we have, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Black doctors from all different specialities that come on week by week to answer the questions again that our community have. So feel free to join that, and I believe there's some flyers at the back. We also have another program within the week. Healthy Hearts, again, it's all about maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We are a health organisation, so it's all about that engagement as well, letting people know about their nutrition and how to maintain that healthy lifestyle, followed by some physical activity as well. We will be hopefully having another suicide awareness training. When, I do not yet know, but we will keep you posted. We have promised you all as well certificates as well, so if you have registered before but you didn't put your contact details, please see Millicent or Angelo that are at the registration desk so that we have that, so we can share those certificates out as soon as possible. Other than that, we've just loved having everyone around. I wanted to leave the next couple of minutes just for people. I know people wanted to network and talk to others. You want a picture?
Group picture, yeah.
Group picture, yeah. If you'd like to have a picture, yes, we'd love to get your smiles in there. Oh, and if you haven't already seen Major at the back for just, you know, some of the lessons that you've learned today, we'd love to record that just so as we're collating some of that information, we have that together. But other than that, we look forward to seeing you all. Please do come on by. We look forward to seeing you all. We have some of our service flyers at the back and some of our African print face masks, so feel free to help yourself to that. There's still some teas, coffees, fruits. Help yourself to that, please. Take it. But yes, please do go around, network. You know, we've still got time. Everyone can. Well, thank you once again, and we hope to see you all soon.
Saboteurs are not like they're both just saboteurs, they're just mean to each other. I hear they're really like cute. Oh wait, it's not very nice. What foods they have?
Yeah. No, not in the room, outside the room.
Sorry, just one more thing, because I know a few people asked for.
Hi, my name is Abida and I work for DWP. I've joined the department about 23 years ago, and I've been a work coach, and now I'm a disability employment advisor. And I was diagnosed with cancer in 2019, and since then it has been difficult to manage the everyday routine, going through all the treatment. But having that knowledge and having that support from the management team, it really helped me. And when I've seen and received an invitation for this event to come, and I thought that would be an eye-opener for me, because I have decided a couple of times about suicidal when I was going through the treatment. And this is really good for me to come in and share my experience with everyone. As being from an ethnic background, we don't come out as and share this information to anybody, but I feel like I need to, because to educate the next generation and educate ourselves, we need to come up with all the whatever we've never been discussed before, and this is a great opportunity to come into this course, and I'm looking forward to the next one, because I think I will able to support my colleagues, friends, family members, and so on. So thank you for inviting us, and I look forward to the next session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Et je réponds au nom de M. Makusanka Ramazani Mateso. Je représente ma communauté africaine des Congolais, précisément ceux de Manchester. Et justement, nous sommes ici dans un séminaire de sensibilisation sur la lutte contre le suicide, dont ça nous a été très utile. Et puis ça nous a fait aussi une impression et pourcentage qui nous donne 75,1% des hommes sont morts suite au suicide. Maintenant, ça nous a un peu donné la chance de continuer à faire la lutte, de sensibiliser les hommes surtout, et de réduire les suicides faits par les hommes suite au problème du manque de travail et d'autres problèmes personnels. Alors, nous étions aussi invités à aider la communauté en général sur le fait de lutter contre l'effet des suicides, parce que se suicider, ce n'est pas une solution, mais quand vous arrivez à parler, à s'expliquer, à échanger avec les autres, vous aurez une solution contre votre suicide. Et nous remercions aussi à CAHN d'organiser cet atelier, et plus particulièrement à notre animateur, formateur, dont il a été le moteur de succès en collaboration avec CAHN et la communauté entière pour la réussite de cette activité d'aujourd'hui, et nous vous remercions.
Merci. If you're ready,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Hello, my name is Naseem Shafi, and I work as a training counselor with CAHN. And today's event was very fruitful and useful for me in the sense that it gave me the idea, because before attending this session, I thought that asking somebody about that if they are suicidal or they are having any thoughts about suicide might be planting the seed in their mind. But after today's session, I came to know that that's not true, and this is not how it happens. Rather, giving them that confidence that we are open to listen about it, it helps to some extent. That's what I like to say. Thank you.
Cool. Nice one.
See you later.
I think I said it loud. You actually talking to yourself. But no.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Good. Does anyone want to sit in front?
Oh, yeah. You can sit. I'll sit. Let's sit. I'll Little people. Sit down. I'll sit next to you. This is like a school photo. We should have someone on the other side.
More.
Come on, Imran. None of your volunteers going to get this picture. You come in. Imran, you're not getting out of it. Right in the front. You guys put this on. You need to help people together.
Don't worry. It's fine. Now, I have got a challenge. This camera works with smile. So you guys have to smile. Good.
Don't put that mobile away because you need to take with.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to cut it off.
For the smallest one in the room, she's very bossy.
Oh, sorry.
So I need to smile now for this camera to work.
Do we say something?
No, don't worry. Just smile. Good. One more. See you next time. Oh.
You almost forgot.
Come after you.
You have to take a picture with it, yeah.
Oh.
No, you have to take a photo with the phone, I think.
Yeah.
Why don't I give you the phone?
Sit down, Imran.
Yeah, go on, sit down.
Sit down, Imran.
Just say yes. I'm a married man. I always say yes. That's why I'm saying yes.
Go.
Come on in.
Sneaking away. That was the photo.
You can push that if you want to stand or sit. All right. Good. I'm going to take the professional one again. Because we've got a new member here. Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My name is Rosalind McGowan, CAHN's Counseling Senior Manager. Today I attended the suicidal awareness training and it was really beneficial to myself as well as my colleagues and trainee counselors. I was really glad to be here this afternoon to get a more in-depth, up-to-date knowledge of suicidal awareness, and I believe it would have benefited me and all those who attended. It was there was a well turnout of persons coming out to hear all about suicide awareness. And I also represent the Caribbean African Health Network counseling team.
A take home away from this course, well, mine would be is to be more open to speaking about suicide and suicidal thoughts with people, not to shy away from it, and actually just train yourself up so that you can be more comfortable in speaking with someone, because if you're more comfortable, they'll be more comfortable in speaking to you about it. And you don't know what's going on in someone's life, so always asking will give them that opportunity to speak up. Whether it is or whether it isn't, you can still be there to support them in some way.
Yeah. What she said. But also, I guess, I think I'd probably ask more than once. I think what I'm learning is that people generally, if you ask them the first time, they'll say they're fine. And then you can pick up on that, whether that fine is really fine, and then ask again to make sure that there isn't something, that they do need help with. I think I'll be a bit more persistent than I have been in the past.
Yeah, and just adding on to that, we've learned that sometimes when you ask directly the question, it can be a shock to them as well, because they've not been asked before and they've not thought of being able to open up to someone about it. So asking them the second time gives them that second chance to just take it all in and then realise actually someone's here reaching out. So yeah.